Immortal Cultivation begins with gaining a superhuman constitution. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 126 Kryptonian Flying Sword. Don't be too happy just yet. Your natal flying sword is indeed a rare treasure, but it will also attract envy. Furthermore, your current cultivation level is only at the key refining level. With your current spiritual power, you probably can't even perform a complete sword technique. Therefore, don't reveal your natal flying sword until the critical moment. I will use some simple materials to forge an identical flying sword for you to use daily. As for your natal flying sword, it should be nurtured within your danshan. A man is innocent, but he is guilty of possessing a treasure, Yang Hong warned sternly. Su Poman nodded seriously. He understood this principle well. Just like his own superhuman constitution, before it became stronger, it could only be used as a trump card. Disciple, take this, Yang Hong said, pulling out a milky white jade slip and tossing it to Su Poman. This contains information about the attributes of various flying swords. Generally, the attributes of one's natal flying sword must be kept strictly confidential and never disclosed to anyone. This is the only way to achieve unexpected results during battle. You can use the information on this jade slip to determine which attribute your flying sword belongs to, so you have a clear idea of what it is. It also details how many flying sword attributes work in conjunction with other tactics. If you're interested, you can delve deeper into it. Su Poman took the slip and, without rushing to read it, placed it directly into his storage bag. Put away your flying sword and return. Starting next month, your monthly salary should be raised to that of a sequence disciple. Practice diligently. If you encounter any bottlenecks, come back to me. Come back to the Wanjianfang in 3 days to retrieve your spare flying sword. From now on, you can use that spare sword in front of others. Yang Hong withdrew his gaze from the Fenji sword and returned to the main seat, speaking slowly. Yes, master, Su Poman thought, and the suspended burning silence sword transformed into a thin streak of red light and entered his danshan. He then bowed to Yang Hong and slowly exited the attic. Using the black sword token, he descended to the first floor of the Wanjianfang. Young Master Su, you're back. Zhang Yu, upon seeing Su Poman, trotted up and greeted him warmly. Did you hear the vibration upstairs just now? It seems like a tsunami has occurred here. There's a very violent tremor coming from underground. It's really scary. Tsunami. Su Poman was stunned, then thought of the destroyed underground fire chamber. Perhaps, but our sect has masters here, so even if a tsunami were to occur, it wouldn't cause any waves. Of course, Zhang Yu replied with a smile. By the way, senior brother Zhang, I have some things to do. Su Poman said hello and headed straight out of the Fang. Zhang Yu walked him all the way to the door, saying, take care. Following the mountain path, Su Poman returned alone to his residence. The sun was blazing brightly in the sky, but Su Poman had no intention of practicing. He tapped his storage bag, pulled out a milky white jade slip, and gently placed it between his eyebrows. His spiritual consciousness entered the slip, instantly reading a wealth of information about the flying sword's attributes. The jade slip introduced that the attributes of flying swords are divided into 4 levels according to the strength of their combat power enhancement. Low grade, medium grade, high grade and top grade. Among them, the low grade attributes are the most common. According to this jade slip, there are 3,681 low grade flying sword attributes included. The most common low grade flying sword attributes are sharpness, solidity, speed, poison, frost, fire, flexibility, phantom, gravity, and shadow. Most of the low grade flying sword attributes only add some simple abilities to the flying sword. For example, frost means that the flying sword will emit cold air when attacking, and there is a certain probability of freezing the enemy after multiple attacks. Sharpness enhances the penetration ability of the flying sword. Although these low-grade flying sword attributes are varied, they all have one common feature, that is, they are very weak, and the enhancement of combat power is very limited. The effect caused can only cause a little trouble for the opponent, but it will not play a decisive role in the outcome of the battle. As for mid-grade flying sword attributes, they are quite powerful. The jade slip records 492 of them. These attributes are typically found only on mid-grade and higher magical instrument level flying swords, such as Broken Gold, Illusionary God, Broken Stratum, Controlling Wind, Mysterious Tracks, and fiery flame. These attributes can significantly boost a sword cultivator's attack power and play a crucial role in combat. The even rarer high-grade flying sword attributes, found only in spiritual instruments, are catalogued in the Jade Slip, totaling 126. Each one offers a significant and powerful boost to a flying sword, allowing cultivators to defeat the stronger with these flying swords and leapfrog forces. As for the highest grade attributes, the Jade Slip lists 56 in total, including Gold Evil, Wood Poison, 3000 Weak Waters, Flame God, Dividing Mountains and Severing Peaks, Ice Pole, Thundering the Nine Heavens, Breaking the Sky, and Sword Light Splitting Shadows. Top-grade flying sword attributes are extremely rare, found only in high-quality magical flying swords. The strength of the magical flying sword is inextricably linked to the number of top-grade attributes it possesses. Therefore, every sword cultivator places great emphasis on the cultivation of their own innate flying sword, hoping to cultivate more top-grade attributes within their own flying sword. While this Jade Slip catalogs thousands of flying sword attributes, it's not exhaustive. Many undiscovered or unrecorded flying sword attributes still exist in the world of Immortal Cultivation, so this slip serves only as a reference. It also records some methods for countering enemies with flying sword attributes, such as specific formations, talismans, sword techniques, and spells. When these various methods are combined, the sum of their parts often exceeds their sum. Su Poman activated his super brain mode to sort through this information, finding corresponding attributes to the 11 supreme attributes described in the Jade Slip: Golden Evil, Flame God, Thousand Mountains, Glitter, Sword Light Splitting, and Invisibility. As for the attribute that could evolve the sword's body through sunbathing, Su Poman couldn't find the corresponding information. He suspected it might be related to his own blood essence. This superhuman blood essence imbued his natal flying sword with a supreme attribute never before seen in the world of Immortal Cultivation. This attribute allowed the flying sword to enhance its hardness, material grade, sharpness, and other fundamental attributes through sunbathing. Similar to Su Poman's black iron body, this attribute allowed the flying sword to continuously grow, evolve, and upgrade, possessing limitless potential. Let's name this supreme attribute Krypton from now on. It's quite interesting to think of a flying sword that can bask in the sun with me, Su Poman muttered to himself. He then put the Jade Slip away and, with a thought, the burning silence sword suddenly erupted from his mouth. The sword, measuring only about 50 centimeters, looked rather diminutive, but controlling a flying sword of this size would be a bit of a struggle for Su Poman's current level of spiritual awareness and sword control. Fortunately, the burning silence sword possessed its own spirituality, and because it was his natal flying sword, it was connected to Su Poman's thoughts, greatly reducing the difficulty of controlling the sword. Chapter 127 Top Attributes. Su Poman stared at the incredibly solid stone bench beside the stone table. A sudden thought struck him, a desire to test the power of the burning silence sword. He placed his left hand behind his back, his right thumb tightly clasped around his ring finger, his pinky curled naturally. He extended his index and middle fingers forward, forming a sword-like gesture. He bent his wrist upward and gently tapped the bench through the air, muttering a single word in a deep voice. Go. As soon as he finished speaking, the sword-controlling technique activated instantly. With a hum, the burning silence sword vibrated slightly, vanishing in a flash of red light. The next moment, the flying sword appeared half a foot behind the bench, floating quietly. At this moment, a hole that went through the stone bench appeared in the center of the stone bench. The remaining fiery red color in the hole was spreading at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, golden rays of light with a sharp aura shot out from the inside out, cutting dense cracks on the stone bench. These cracks crisscrossed each other, as if they were cut out by sharp knives and axes. Finally, with a bang, the stone bench shattered into countless very regular square stones and scattered all over the ground. Then it was engulfed by a ball of flames and turned into a pool of indescribable liquid. Oh my god, Su Poman was shocked by the lethality of the burning silence sword. He walked to the front of the liquid probe and exclaimed repeatedly, a magic weapon is worthy of being a magic weapon. It is much more powerful than the magic tools and spiritual tools. I, a cultivator in the first level of the key refining stage, can exert such a powerful power. If it were controlled by a cultivator in the golden core stage or the nascent soul stage, the attack power would probably be even more abnormal. Recalling the previous attack process of the burning silence sword, Su Poman found signs of the three ultimate attributes of golden evil, flame god and flashing. As for the remaining ones, they were not very obvious. It should be that the strength of the stone bench was not enough to make the burning silence sword show all of its ultimate attributes. In addition, there are some active ultimate attributes that require Su Poman to guide when controlling the sword to be successfully exerted, such as swordlight splitting shadows and invisible without a trace. The special ability of swordlight splitting allows the flying sword to transform into multiple sword clones. These clones are identical in appearance to the original, imperceptible even to divine observation. The only difference is that the attack power of the clones is only 10% of the original flying sword. Their main purpose is to confuse the enemy and distract their attention, while the true burning silence sword quietly approaches and delivers a fatal blow. Shadowless grants the burning silence sword the ability to hide and conceal itself. Aside from the sword's master, even close proximity is difficult for others to detect, and even difficult to detect with divine consciousness. While this supreme attribute is powerful, it also has a significant drawback. While in the shadowless state, the flying sword cannot be used for controlled attacks. Once the sword control technique is activated, the flying sword will break free of this state, alerting others to the abnormality and forcing them to take precautions. Su Poman thought, and his spiritual energy surged forth, instantly consuming more than half. The burning silence sword swung back and forth in the air, and beside it, a replica of the original sword materialized. The two flying swords hovered upright in midair, emitting a faint red glow that illuminated a small area within the stone house. Su Poman examined them carefully for a moment and realized he couldn't tell which was the true flying sword with his naked eyes. He could only rely on his spiritual sense to determine the true location of the burning silence sword. This was because he was the sword master, others couldn't distinguish it this way. After a dozen more breaths, the sword replica dissipated into the air with a bang. Su Poman had a vague understanding. The number and duration of these sword shadows were related to his own spiritual power. The more spiritual power he channeled, the more sword shadows he could conjure. With his current spiritual power, he could only produce one sword shadow from the burning silence sword, and that couldn't last long, making it impossible to fully unleash the sword's powerful properties. Su Poman waved his hand, and the burning silence sword slowly flew over and landed in his palm, then slowly vanished as he stared intently. Oh my god, isn't this the legendary shadowless sword? While I can't attack without a trace, I can use the burning silence sword as a weapon. And since I've also cultivated physical cultivation techniques, if I could sneak up behind an enemy with a burning silence sword and strike them, hey, that would be fantastic. Su Poman waved his hand twice, but there was no sound of air being sliced, as if there was truly nothing in his hand. He then turned his gaze to the only remaining stone table in the stone house, a faint smile playing on his lips. Sorry, I'm going to use you as a target this time. He strolled over to the lonely stone table and casually swept his right hand across it, seemingly without any resistance. The stone table remained standing, with no movement. Huh? Impossible. Su Poman reached out and pushed, and the stone table instantly split in half, the broken edge as smooth as a mirror, as if it had been specially polished. That's right, Su Poman chuckled. He noticed the cross-section of the stone table was different from the stone bench. After a moment's reflection, he understood the reason. He said quietly, it seems that in its shadowless state, the burning silence sword can only display its sharpness and hardness, unable to activate its other ultimate flying sword attributes. Thus, in this state, the burning silence sword truly becomes a short sword-like weapon. After gaining a thorough understanding of his natal flying sword, Su Poman released the burning silence sword from its shadowless state. He walked to the wall and opened the stone roof, letting in the sunlight. He returned to his bed, sat cross-legged, and prepared to begin his training. As the burning silence sword came into contact with the sunlight, its entire blade darkened, embodying a deep, dark red. The sword spirit, like a kindergartner encountering ice cream, emitted an extremely excited emotion. Without waiting for Su Poman's command, it flew behind him, quietly hovering in the air, absorbing the energy contained in the sunlight. Su Poman glanced at the open stone ceiling and subconsciously frowned, fearing a passing expert might discover something unusual about his natal flying sword. However, the burning silence sword, sensing his intention, reacted instantly, automatically entering a shadowless state and vanishing without a trace. Not bad, Su Poman couldn't help but praise it after noticing this. The burning silence sword, as if sensing its master's praise, hummed and responded quickly, its body fading in the air like a fleeting glint. Chapter 128 Test. Time flew by, During the day, Su Poman primarily practiced the scorching sun technique to improve his cultivation, and he also set aside some time to study the jade slip for refining given to him by Ouyang Hong. At night, he began practicing 5 elements magic, and in the latter half of the night, he practiced a mountain refining technique. His schedule was packed, and he felt deeply fulfilled. In the blink of an eye, it was the day he had agreed to pick up his spare flying sword with his master Ouyang Hong. Su Poman opened a door to his room. It was dusk, and many disciples were milling around the stone house area. Upon seeing him, several approached him, greeting him with respectful greetings. By now, most of the disciples in the Liang sect's lower Taoist academy had heard of a new disciple named Su Poman, who had become a disciple of a giant and stage elder, instantly becoming a master-like figure and possessing resources only available to the more envious sequence disciples. Many disciples, therefore, developed unrealistic fantasies, crowding the entrance of the 10,000 Swords Pavilion daily, hoping that Ouyang, the upstairs attendant, would notice them, recognize their talents, and accept them as his disciples. Unfortunately, this was just wishful thinking. Amidst the envious gazes of the crowd, Su Poman was welcomed inside by Zhongyu. He reached the staircase entrance, released his spiritual energy to activate the Black Sword token, and successfully reached the top floor of the pentagonal black building. Master, disciple, I'm here to retrieve the sword. Su Poman bowed respectfully toward the room. Whoosh, the door blew open with a breeze. Come in, Yang Hong's aged voice echoed from within. Upon entering, Su Poman noticed that on the table before Yang Hong lay a crimson flying sword, identical to his own burning silent sword. Aside from a slight loss of spiritual light, every other detail was identical, even down to the subtle bluish-purple sheen on the blade surface. Disciple greets master, pays respects to master. Su Poman bowed. Yang Hong opened his eyes, looked at Su Poman with a penetrating look, and murmured, yes, the spiritual power has increased a lot in the past 2 days. It seems that the cultivation of useless spiritual roots is not as difficult as the rumors say. Master, you know everything. Su Poman subconsciously touched his nose, then smiled bitterly and said, Master, I'm afraid my aptitude will embarrass you. The speed of cultivation is much slower than others. Xiao Zhe came to me yesterday and told me about you. I thought you were a 4-element spiritual root, but I didn't expect you to be the waste spiritual root that is rumored to be the most difficult to cultivate. I was negligent. I only saw your talent in sword making, but didn't pay much attention to the difficulties in your cultivation. Yang Hong talked to himself, making Su Poman feel a little overwhelmed. You'll have to wait until next month to claim the Liang sect's resources. Your master will also give you some assistance. From now on, you can focus on comprehending the Dao of swordsmithing without distraction. There's no need to waste energy running around looking for cultivation resources. Here are 2 bottles of purple yang pills, which are most effective for improving your cultivation during the key refining stage. Take one during daytime cultivation to significantly increase your cultivation. Also, this is a bottle of ice vein pills, which can extend your cultivation time. However, remember not to take too much, otherwise the cold poison will accumulate in your meridians and be difficult to clear. As Yang Hong spoke, he waved his hand and presented the 3 bottles of pills to Su Poman. Master, don't you think my disciple's cultivation aptitude is too poor to inherit your lineage? Su Poman asked in surprise. Yang Hong waved his hand and explained expressionlessly, if I were looking for a gifted disciple, I would have found one over the centuries. How could you possibly have a chance? Your innate talent in swordsmithing is what I value most. Only those with this talent can advance far in swordsmithing or weapon refining. As for those with mere talent, their minds are mostly focused on cultivation, not devoting much time to swordsmithing, making it difficult for them to achieve anything. Su Poman nodded silently. The Dao is ruthless, and everyone's time is limited. Faced with a threat of lifespan, those with good talent would undoubtedly strive to cultivate and break through to a higher realm, thereby extending their lives, rather than wasting time on swordsmithing. Have you read the swordsmithing jade slips I gave you these days? Yang Hong asked, his expression grave. Su Poman nodded respectfully. I've read a portion of it. Is there anything you don't understand? Yang Hong continued. Su Poman reflected carefully and realized he had been studying the sword forging heritage in super brain mode, so he had no doubts. Master, I have no questions at the moment, Su Poman replied honestly. Oh, Yang Hong's face darkened. He suspected the boy was feigning knowledge, or perhaps simply hadn't taken the time to study it carefully, and was fabricating this excuse to get away with it out of fear of anger. Since you have no questions, then I will test you, Yang Hong said slowly, his expression unpleasant. He then stood up, hands clasped behind his back, and approached Su Poman, who was bowing his head. He said quietly, "Disciple, explain to me the meaning of the opening line of the sword-forging heritage. Heavy fire is formed by nature, returning but never departing, the three morning horns mother furnace, the mother and child yin and yang fire, the silver quicksand of the climbing void." Su Poman frowned, wondering why his master would ask him such a simple question. It was so childish, leaving him puzzled. At this time, Yang Hong also noticed Su Poman's expression, thinking that he would not know the answer to this question at all, so his face changed, and he asked angrily, "Disciple, don't you understand? Or, you didn't even go to see it?" Su Poman raised his head with a confused look on his face. After seeing Yang Hong's anxious expression, his mind raced, and he immediately understood the misunderstanding. He hurriedly said, "Master, disciple knows what this sentence means. Heavy fire is the flame in the refining furnace. Heavy fire is natural. It means that when you urge the flame, you only need to control it." Yang Hong's originally flushed face slowly solidified. He listened carefully to what Su Poman said, and suddenly felt that his mood was like riding a roller coaster, up and down. What's going on with this kid? Just now he was frowning like he knew nothing, but now he's speaking so coherently. His ideas are exactly the same as before, and he seems to have even added some new stuff. I have to ask him a few more questions to get to the bottom of his situation. Ahem. Yang Hong coughed dryly and said calmly, "The answer is quite satisfactory. Then I have a few more questions for you. Disciple, how do you explain the second chapter of the sword forging inheritance Jade Slip, Purple Light Shiangsu and Valley Shiangsu, Yunlu Threefold Break Fire Gate, Golden Light God General stepping on Yundong, looking back at the shimmering purple road copper?" After listening to this, Su Poman didn't even need to think before answering. Purple light heaven is a mid-level spiritual material recorded in the spiritual materials section at the front of the jade slip. It's coral-like and pale purple in color. It releases a cloud of purple mist in the flames. Its function is to seal the refining furnace. Refining magical instruments in this state can enhance the stability of the material after melting and reduce the risk of the furnace exploding. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 129 Sword Box. Yang Hong posed several more questions, each one increasingly difficult, but he found that Su Poman was able to answer them all with ease. This boy's comprehension is truly incredible. I've already mentioned some of the content from the later chapters, and he's already answered them all. I feel like I've lived all these years in vain. Yang Hong felt a slight blow to his heart, and began to doubt his life. Outwardly, however, he maintained the dignity of his master. He nodded calmly and said slowly, "You have a reasonable grasp of the contents of the sword forging inheritance jade slip. When you return, study it carefully. I don't ask for speed, but for precision. I will test you again later. If your answers satisfy me, there will naturally be a reward. This is your spare flying sword. Take it." With a wave of his hand, the flying sword on the table suddenly floated up and was presented to Su Poman. "Yes, master, I understand." Su Poman stretched out his hand and grabbed the flying sword and the bottles of pills in front of him. After putting the pills into the storage bag, he took the spare flying sword and examined it carefully. Yang Hong returned to the main seat and sat down. After drinking a cup of spiritual tea on the table, he slowly explained, "In order to avoid attracting too much attention, the flying sword I forged for you is only at the level of a top-grade magical weapon. The main materials used are a combination of fire rock and broken bridge gold. Its characteristics are toughness and durability, and it is not so easily damaged. It is enough to cope with various situations you encounter with your current cultivation level. It actually has 2 mid-grade attributes. This flying sword is also one of the top-level magical flying swords. It is even not inferior to some top-grade magical weapons." Su Poman stroked the spare flying sword in his hand, which was exactly the same as the burning silence sword, and thought secretly in his heart, "Since you are exactly the same as the burning silence sword, I will name you Burning Shadow Sword. From now on, You are my natal flying sword that I, Su Poman, will show to the world." After secretly deciding on the name of this spare flying sword in his heart, Su Poman put it into the storage bag, then bowed to Yang Hong and said, "Master, if there is nothing else, I will take my leave first. Go ahead, practice diligently, and don't neglect the art of swordsmithing." Yang Hong waved his hand, picking up his teacup and blowing away the mist. Su Poman turned and left the attic, using the black sword order to descend to the 10,000 Swords Pavilion on the first floor of the pentagonal black building. "Young Master Su, you've come down," Zhang Yu trotted over and greeted enthusiastically. Su Poman nodded, glanced at the items hanging in the Wanjianfang, and suddenly an idea came to his mind. He said, "Senior brother Zhang, do we have sword cases for sale in our shop? I see other brothers have their own sword cases. Are there any special requirements for us sword cultivators, Mr. Su? You've asked the right person. Let me explain the ins and outs of this." Zhang Yu stroked his palm and said with a smile. Then he brought a chair and placed it next to Su Poman. "Please sit down, thank you." After thanking him, Su Poman flicked the back of his robe with one hand and sat down on it, crossing his legs calmly. "Senior brother Zhang, don't stand and talk, sit together." A hint of surprise flashed in Zhang Yu's eyes, and his favor for Su Poman increased greatly. "Okay, Mr. Su, then let's sit down and talk slowly." As he spoke, he stretched out his hand, used the object control technique to grab a round stool and placed it under him, then slowly began to speak. "A sword case is a necessity for every new sword cultivator, especially after refining the natal flying sword that is connected to one's life. It is best not to place the natal flying sword in a storage bag, because that will sever the connection between the sword master and the flying sword. The process of spiritual birth of the natal flying sword of sword cultivators like us will be relatively long. If you can carry the flying sword with you, you can constantly use your spiritual consciousness to refine it and blend it with your aura, so that the flying sword and the sword master can always maintain a connection. This will strengthen the connection between the natal flying sword and its master, making the execution of the sword controlling technique smoother and greatly aiding its future spiritual advancement to a spiritual artifact. Look, I always carry my flying sword with me, even cuddling it when I sleep. Perhaps one day, with my sincere devotion, I'll be able to give birth to a seed of spiritual essence within my natal flying sword. After building my foundation and forging it with some high-grade materials, there's a high probability that it will become a spiritual artifact. That's a spiritual artifact, far more powerful than a magical weapon," Zhang Yu explained to Su Poman in a serious tone. As he spoke, he lifted his long gown, revealing a square black sword case, over 30 centimeters long, under his armpit. Su Poman looked puzzled, wondering why this guy would hide a sword case under his armpit, a place prone to odor. Wasn't he afraid his natal flying sword would become a body-smelling flying sword? Thinking of the scene where everyone covered their noses and fled upon the appearance of the flying sword, a smile played on his face. Seeing Su Poman smile, Zhang Yu seemed encouraged and spoke even more fervently. He had been practicing for decades and was now at the 8th level of the key refining stage. He truly possessed numerous insights into sword cultivation, many of which were truly valuable, requiring time and effort to comprehend. Generally, others wouldn't readily share this kind of experience, but it depended on the individual. Given Su Poman's status, Zhang Yu, having spent years in the mortal world as a businessman, was a man of great intelligence. He knew that with his own qualifications, achieving a foundation building was nearly impossible. The only way to achieve this was to find a true patron within the Liang sect. If he could even obtain the resources slipped through the fingers of those influential figures, his cultivation would be significantly enhanced. It was for this reason that Zhang Yu chose to work as a clerk at the Wanjianfang, rather than, like his fellow disciples, constantly accumulating resources through quests in hopes of achieving a slim chance of achieving a foundation building. He'd previously considered the situation, compared to the constant dangers of missions, currying favor with a powerful patron was a quicker path to success. It was a gamble, but he'd done extensive research beforehand. And only after learning about the strength of Master Yang from the Wanjianfang did he finally make the decision. Truth be told, for a man already in his 50s, groveling before a much younger man wasn't an easy task. Pride is a mountain in the heart of a person. Some see it as an insurmountable obstacle, while others see it as a stepping stone to the clouds. This is the choice of each individual. Regardless of their background, what seemingly prominent figure hasn't experienced unbearable hardships and difficulties during their youth? They all gritted their teeth, outlasting the egocentric youngsters one after another, ultimately achieving the enviable position of power. These experiences also cultivated a certain magnanimity and perspective, giving them the assets to rise to power XDM. There's one more chapter coming soon. Chapter 130 Dragon Scale Wood. Zhang Yu firmly believed that the hard work he was now enduring would pay off. As he carefully explained the situation to Su Poman, his smile gradually grew more natural, his eyes retaining a rare clarity. He felt that the young man before him possessed a far superior character than someone like Xiao Zhen. Despite his noble status, he was remarkably humble and modest, and he knew how to respect others. Unlike Xiao Zhen, he was arrogant, bossing him around and completely disregarding him as a human being. Thank you, Senior Brother Zhang, for your guidance. I've benefited greatly from it. Since the sword case is so important, please select a suitable case for my natal flying sword, Su Poman spoke, patting his storage bag and withdrawing the burning shadow sword. Upon extracting the burning shadow sword, Zhang Yu's eyes flashed with amazement, instantly captivated by its shape. His mouth dropped open, but he couldn't utter a word. Hey, Zhang Yu stood up and walked over to Su Poman, his eyes gleaming with envy. He couldn't help but reach out and touch the hilt of the burning shadow sword, then, as if realizing something, he withdrew his hand as if struck by lightning. Young Master Su, I'm sorry for being so abrupt. Your flying sword is truly so stunning that I couldn't resist touching your natal flying sword, Zhang Yu said apologetically. For a sword cultivator, their natal flying sword is a forbidden delicacy, a dragon's reverse scale. Except for killing, no one else is allowed to touch it, for it feels like someone touching their wife's hand, a deeply uncomfortable feeling. Su Poman, new to the world of immortal cultivation, was unfamiliar with this rule. He waved his hand nonchalantly, saying, Brother Zhang, it's alright. Don't blame yourself. Take it if you want to see it. With that, Su Poman handed over the burning shadow sword. Zhang Yu was stunned. A strange feeling welled up inside him, like he was visiting a friend's house, captivated by his friend's wife's beauty and unable to resist touching her hand. Just as he was feeling overwhelmed with shame, his friend pushed his wife into his arms and suddenly said something like, take her and play with her if you like. No. Zhang Yu quickly waved his hands away, shaking his head like a rattle. No need, Master Su, I'm just looking. Alright. Su Poman, somewhat puzzled, retracted the burning shadow sword. After suppressing the strange feeling in his heart, Zhang Yu carefully examined the burning shadow sword, and marveled in admiration as he looked at it, and said in great amazement, could such a perfect sword blank be made by Elder Yang himself? I have seen countless sword blanks in this Wanjin workshop, but I have never seen one that can compare with it. It is really as if it were made by nature, like an ancient immortal sword. After looking at it for a whole incense stick, Zhang Yu reluctantly withdrew his gaze and muttered, after I build my foundation, I must modify the appearance of my natal flying sword according to the appearance of this sword blank. Mr. Su, please come in with me. I roughly estimated the size of your flying sword. We should have a suitable sword case in our workshop, Zhang Yu said, and stretched out his hand, inviting Su Poman to walk in. Su Poman nodded and headed straight for the storeroom. A defensive formation had been set up at the entrance. Zhang Yu retrieved a jade plate and activated it with his spiritual power, successfully unlocking the formation. He then pulled a strange-shaped key from his storage bag and unlocked the door. The ceiling of the storeroom was inlaid with moonstones, making it dim despite the lack of windows. Zhang Yu trotted inside and searched a vast warehouse for supplies. Finally, he arrived in front of Su Poman. He patted his storage bag and placed a series of sword cases of various shapes on the table at the entrance. Young Master Su, your natal flying sword is one of the larger ones in the sword monastery, so its case naturally needs to be larger. We have 14 sword cases here that will fit your sword. The 10 low-grade sword cases on the table are worth 15 low-grade spirit stones. The remaining 4 mid-grade sword cases are made of finer materials, so they're more expensive. Which one would you like? Zhang Yu explained with a smile, cradling the 4 sword cases in his arms. Su Poman passed by the lower-grade sword cases on the table and looked at the 4 mid-grade sword cases in Zhang Yu's arms. The top one was a jade-white hue, gleaming brilliantly under the moonstone's light. Zhang Yu noticed Su Poman's gaze and explained, Young Master Su, this sword case is forged from black crystalline stone. It has a texture as smooth as jade and boasts exceptionally good defensive capabilities. Su Poman nodded and peered down. The lower sword case had a layer of transparent resin-like substance on its surface. Beneath this transparent substance, a layer of red dragon scale-like patterns covered the surface. From a distance, it looked truly remarkable, as if forged from a section of a red dragon's body. Young Master Su, this sword case is made from dragon scale wood and is the most valuable of the four, worth 50 lower-grade spirit stones. The wood-attributed ore of dragon scale wood nourishes the fire element within a flying sword, significantly benefiting its growth, Zhang Yu explained slowly. Su Poman waved his hand, and the sword case fell into his hands. He glanced at the remaining two mid-grade sword cases, one light blue and the other dark black. His interest immediately faded, and he began to carefully examine the dragon scale wood sword case in his hand. The sword case had a warm, resinous feel, a pleasant sensation. The sensation reminded Su Poman of the string of beads his grandfather often played with. He instantly made a decision. This is it. 50 spirit stones, right? I might not have enough spirit stones on me right now, so I'll use this elixir to pay off the debt. With that, Su Poman patted his storage bag and pulled out the ice vein pill he had just received from Wu Yanghong. His black iron body made it impossible for him to practice the scorching sun technique for a long time, so the elixir was of little use to him. It would be better to exchange it for spirit stones. Upon seeing the words on the jade bottle, Zhang Yu exclaimed, "It's ice vein pill. Why, what's wrong with this ice vein pill? I heard that the Sextan Tower also sells this kind of pill, and it's very valuable," Su Poman said slowly. Zhang Yu swallowed, looked at Su Poman in disbelief, and asked, "Young Master Su, this is a whole bottle of ice vein pill. If you really want to use it to pay off your debt, only one of these pills will be enough. Also, let me add, although this ice vein pill can be purchased at the Dan Tower, the quantity is limited. Priority is given to sequence disciples and those with a senior teacher. Not everyone can buy it. Therefore, a whole bottle of ice vein pill like this is extremely rare. Many elite disciples in the Upper Dao Academy are seeking it at a high price. The price has been driven up to 65 low-grade spirit stones." Chapter 131 Burning Shadow Sword. Is the ice vein pill really that rare? The price is so high. It shouldn't be. Instead of wasting so many spirit stones, they could have spent 2 more days cultivating. Su Poman frowned, finding it somewhat incredulous. Zhang Yu shook his head and said, "Young Master Su, you may not know that once you reach the 9th level of the key refining stage, breaking through the bottleneck requires far more than 2 hours. Therefore, to ensure a successful breakthrough, ice vein pills are essential to extend the life of the flaming sun technique. This is why they have become a must-have for elite disciples seeking breakthroughs. Furthermore, the main ingredient for ice vein pills is extremely far from the sect, and disciples on missions often spend half a month returning to the sect. The high price is understandable. Alright, then I'll give you an ice vein pill to buy this sword case." No, you're a direct disciple of Wu Yanggongfen. Why should you need to pay for things at the Wanjianfang? Master Wu Yang has already explained this. Zhang Yu smiled and shook his head. No spirit stones. Su Poman didn't hesitate to smile. Then I'll be grateful to you. As he spoke, he opened the lid of his sword case and placed a burning shadow sword inside. After bowing to Zhang Yu, Su Poman strode out of the Wanjianfang, a red sword case behind him. With a sword case on his back, Su Poman felt like a true swordsman. Reminiscent of the sword masters he'd read about in novels, a strange sense of pride welled up within him. He gently touched the sword case behind him, and his spiritual sense effortlessly penetrated it and attached itself to the burning shadow sword. At this point, with a single thought, he could send the burning shadow sword flying from the case to attack his enemies. However, the crowds of people here made him give up the idea of testing it out for the time being. By then, the sky had darkened, the stars filling the night sky. The empty grounds of the sword monastery flickered with fiery sparks from the collision of flying swords and black ravine stones. More disciples were coming out to relax. Under the moonlight, Su Poman, dressed in the garb of a Liang sect disciple and carrying a 2-foot-long red sword case, walked along the mountain path toward his residence. The Liang sect's discipline of its disciples was lax. At night, the mountain path would be filled with various disciples out for fun and relaxation. Pairs of young monks would even gather to admire the moon and chat. Even those Taoist children who spent their daytime studying punctuation in the Wenwen Hall would choose to come out and play during the lively evening hours. Monster, look at my swordsmanship, run. Master Longyang Jian Wu is here, on the mountain path, An older boy gestured with a seemingly straight wooden stick. His face was stern, and with a piercing roar, he leaped from the large rock he had been standing on. Waving his stick, he chased after several other Taoist children with spikes of grass stuck to their heads. Wow, wow, run. The Longyang sword is imbued with the spirit of a dragon. We demons are no match for it, one of the leading Taoist children feigned fear as he ran forward, shouting. The other Taoist children, disguised as demons, nodded in agreement, sprinting nimbly forward. Su Poman couldn't help but smile at this, muttering to himself, this age is the most carefree. How wonderful. Then, further sounds of chasing erupted from the mountain path. Su Poman looked closely and saw that the person portraying the Longyang sword had changed. To these Taoist children, the straight wooden stick symbolized the power of the Longyang sword. Whoever received it felt a sense of ritual, becoming the legendary figure of the Liang sect as described by the master. It seems the Liang sect's leaders have some tricks up their sleeves when it comes to controlling people, Su Poman sighed inwardly. With this group of disciples, trained since childhood, if the Liang sect faced a major crisis, these disciples would absolutely choose to live and die with the sect. This was the belief that had been ingrained in them since childhood. They held a fanatical reverence for the sect's leaders, tying themselves to the sect, sharing its glory and disgrace. Su Poman withdrew his gaze, gathered his thoughts, and silently quickened his pace, quickly returning to his residence. Boom! After the stone door closed, Su Poman stared at the stone table, which had been split in two and lay tilted to the ground. With a thought, he formed a sword gesture with his hands and shouted firmly, Fenying, unsheath. A wisp of spiritual consciousness attached itself to the burning shadow sword, and the sword control technique suddenly activated. Buzz! Within its dragon-scale wooden scabbard, the burning shadow sword suddenly vibrated, and a faint spiritual light illuminated the blade. The scabbard's lid opened with a click, and the burning shadow sword slowly flew out. Go! The burning shadow sword, like a drunk, staggered towards the stone table. Its speed wasn't fast, so slow that even an ordinary person could detect its trajectory with the naked eye. Swish! The sword passed by, slicing off a corner of the stone table's edge. It's actually crooked. Su Poman looked surprised. He had thought his sword control skills had reached a certain level, but he realized he'd been overthinking and overconfident. On second thought, this result was understandable. He had only practiced sword control for less than 2 days. With such a short training period, his skill level was naturally limited. Furthermore, the Burning Shadow Sword was considered one of the largest flying swords in the Lower Dao Academy. After all, every inch the sword's size increased, the difficulty of controlling it increased exponentially. His ability to control the Burning Shadow Sword was entirely due to his superior spiritual awareness, which was far superior to that of ordinary cultivators. By comparison, controlling the Burning Silence Sword was significantly easier, giving Su Poman the illusion of mastery. In reality, this was largely due to the presence of a sword spirit within his natal flying sword, making his sword control feel incredibly smooth and natural, and dozens of times faster. Of course, controlling a magical weapon-level flying sword also consumes a greater amount of spiritual energy. Without the presence of his natal flying sword spirit, Su Poman wouldn't even be able to move it even a single ounce of spiritual energy, let alone use it against an enemy. Su Poman speculated that the Burning Silence Sword spirit was using some of the spiritual energy within it to aid his control, but this method wouldn't last long. Each use would require a period of recuperation. In critical situations, he could forcefully control it multiple times. But this would deplete the Burning Silence Sword's spiritual energy and potential, potentially hindering its future advancement. Su Poman opened his mouth, and a beam of red light emanated, revealing the Burning Silence Sword. The Fenji sword flew around Su Poman twice like a little bird, and then rubbed the back of his hand with the hilt of the sword in a very intimate manner. Chapter 132 Sequence Disciple. To confirm his thoughts, Su Poman activated his sword control technique once again. With a gentle thrust of his spiritual consciousness, the Burning Silence Sword whistled out, instantly shredding the stone table into countless shards. Sure enough, it's because of my natal magic weapon and the sword spirit. It seems my true sword control still needs improvement, Su Poman thought to himself. With a word, the Burning Silence Sword returned to his danshin. Let's practice sword control hard tonight. Su Poman waved at the Burning Shadow Sword, and suddenly a strange sluggishness permeated his spiritual consciousness, like a child swinging a sledgehammer, a feeling of powerlessness. After sheathing the Burning Shadow Sword, he returned to bed, took a deep breath, and closed his eyes. Simultaneously, the spirit tempering technique silently began to operate, constantly compressing and sharpening the spiritual consciousness residing within his spiritual altar. The pain, unbearable for ordinary cultivators, was not unbearable for Su Poman. He felt that his brain was accumulating untapped nutrients for the growth of his spiritual consciousness, and the spirit tempering technique was like a shovel, constantly tapping into its potential. As the soul tempering technique was in operation, Su Poman's spiritual consciousness grew slowly but steadily. A silent night passed. As the morning light broke over the horizon, Su Poman opened his eyes, and the soul tempering technique ceased. The dull ache in his mind quickly faded, replaced by a refreshing feeling, like being caressed by a gentle stream. Su Poman narrowed his eyes in pleasure, his spiritual consciousness now flowing with incredible ease. With a thought, the burning shadow sword instantly unsheathed. Under the control of his spiritual consciousness, the burning shadow sword soared up and down in the air several times. Su Poman could clearly feel a slight improvement in his sword control, and the previous sluggishness in his control had also decreased. The spirit tempering technique is quite effective in increasing spiritual awareness. I really don't understand why others resort to such rudimentary methods. Su Poman's face lit up with a smile. He reached out and grasped the air, unleashing his object control technique and slowly pushing the lever on the wall. With a rumble, the stone roof slowly opened, and a hazy ray of light streamed in through the opening. Su Poman's iron-clad body slowly began to function under the sunlight, and strands of warm currents flowed from his body, flowing continuously through his limbs and bones. Since it was early morning, the sunlight wasn't strong enough to support the full power of the scorching sun technique. Therefore, Su Poman didn't rush into practicing the technique. Instead, he withdrew the jade slip containing the sword forging legacy and simultaneously activated his super brain mode. The sword forging legacy contained a vast amount of information, and Su Poman rapidly scanned it with his spiritual sense, not seeking to fully understand it, but simply to memorize it. Under super brain mode, photographic memory came easily to Su Poman. The jade slip contained a variety of texts and illustrations, a vast amount of information constantly stored in his mind. After flipping through it for half an hour, Su Poman finally memorized all the information within. Next, he prepared to delve deeper into the subject of weapon refining. Just then, a flaming talisman flew in from outside the formation, hovering quietly in the room. Sound transmission talisman. Su Poman waved his hand, and the talisman suddenly appeared before him. A male voice, slightly respectful, echoed through the flames. Uncle Su, I am the steward disciple Sun Jun. The sect master has decreed that you now enjoy the treatment of a ranked disciple. Elder Mukang has asked me to change your living quarters. I am waiting outside your stone house. Su Poman's face lit up at this. Change your living quarters. He then glanced around. The cramped room was dark and damp. It's time to move. Su Poman gathered a few miscellaneous items, then opened the stone door and walked out. Outside, a young man with thick eyebrows and a yellow robe stood nearby. Upon seeing Su Poman emerge, he immediately bowed deeply and respectfully, then said in a loud, reverent voice, "Greetings, Uncle Su, no need for formalities." Su Poman waved his hand, then smiled and asked, "Your name is Sun Jun, right? Where will my new residence be?" Sun Jun's eyebrows were much thicker than those of an average person, and his face was unnaturally pale. He hunched his body slightly, raised his head, and said, "Uncle Su, I am Sun Jun. All of our Liang sect sequence disciples are located on Xianyang Peak. There's a spirit gathering formation there, and each sequence disciple is assigned a small courtyard on the peak. I'll personally take you there later." "How many sequence disciples does the Liang sect have now?" Su Poman asked. Upon hearing this, Sun Jun pondered for a moment. There are currently 28 sequence disciples cultivating on Xianyang Peak. Most of them are direct disciples of various elders, as well as those who have made significant contributions to the sect. "Oh, I see. Then let's set off for Xianyang Peak as soon as possible. I need to practice some more later," Su Poman said calmly, looking up at the sun. Sun Jun nodded, extending his right hand and walking ahead. "Uncle Su, follow me. Xianyang Peak is northeast of the lower Dao Court. We'll have to walk a long mountain path." "Okay." The two of them hurried along the mountain path, one in front of the other. Sun Jun, in front, kept a constant eye on Su Poman's pace, ensuring he didn't overdo it. Along the way, they chatted about sequence disciples. Su Poman learned from Sunjun that sequence disciples held a status far higher than other disciples, surpassing even the elite disciples of the upper Dao court. They were the darlings of the Liang sect, enjoying the most favorable conditions and privileges within the sect. Besides being able to cultivate in a spiritual energy-rich location like Xianyang Peak, sequence disciples also receive significantly higher monthly salaries than ordinary disciples. Disciples in the lower Dao court receive only 5 low-grade spirit stones per month, while those in the upper Dao court receive 25. Sequence disciples, on the other hand, receive 500 spirit stones each month. They also receive a supply of rare medicinal elixirs, such as ice vein pills, earth mist pills, and marrow cleansing pills. Most importantly, when they reach the foundation establishment stage, they are granted a foundation establishment pill by the sect to test their foundation without having to participate in the brutal trials of the secret realm. The advantage of sequence disciples lies in their superior cultivation aptitude, giving them a higher chance of successfully building their foundation. Most of the elders of the Liang sect were once sequence disciples of the Liang sect. Upon learning this, Su Poman couldn't help but sigh repeatedly. Compared to these gifted disciples, the lives of ordinary disciples struggling in the Dao courts are truly difficult. Their aptitude was already inferior to that of sequence disciples, and they had to waste time completing quests, searching for materials, and even participating in secret trials to even have the chance at building their foundation. If Su Poman hadn't been accepted as a disciple by Yang Hong by chance, he would have likely spent a considerable amount of time and energy on miscellaneous tasks. Chapter 133 Clifftop Courtyard. The two men traversed the mountain path, passing a succession of quaint and elegant buildings, arriving at Xianyang Peak from Guangqi Peak, home to the lower Taoist temple. As they approached Xianyang Peak, they caught sight of irregular clouds lingering on the mountainside. A breathtaking mist, imbued with spiritual energy, wafted across their faces, invigorating them. Stalagmites nestled in the broken cliffs resembled pillars of heaven, a breathtaking spectacle. The Yang Bridge, a dazzling rainbow connecting the two peaks, was a breathtaking spectacle. A group of playful, yellow-haired monkeys chirped and clung to the trees in the distance, their arms stretched out, swaying the branches. Ahead, a narrow stone path, about 2 meters wide, clung to the mountainside, twisting 3 times every 10 steps, winding its way up to the summit like a thread reaching the sky. Green grass, wildflowers, and towering ancient trees lined the path. After walking for about an incense stick of time, the two men arrived at a Yang Bridge. A chain as thick as a bucket lay stretched across the swirling mist. This bridge served as the only access point from Xianyang Peak. Sun Jun, walking in front, lightly leaped, landing securely on the seemingly smooth chain. Turning, he said in a deep voice, "Young Master Su, the mist can sometimes obscure your vision. Use your spiritual sense to observe the chain's direction as you walk, and you won't have to worry about slipping." "Yes," Su Poman nodded, leaping with a leap. Like a rock spreading its wings, he landed on the chain. Glancing down, his supervision piercing the layers of mist gave him a slight start. A bottomless abyss. However, navigating the chain was no challenge for a cultivator, so Sunjun simply warned him and continued on without looking back. The closer they got to Xianyang Peak, the denser the surrounding spiritual energy grew. Even Su Poman could feel a stirring within his Danshan, even taking a deep breath. If Immortal could live here permanently, living 200 or 80 years old would surely be easy. Su Poman thought of this and suddenly remembered the 2 young maids left behind in Pu State. A slight stir in his heart. I must find time to go back and visit them someday. The two of them, treading on the chains, soon arrived at Xianyang Peak. A white jade stairway led to the starting point. On either side stood a hollow stone railing carved with auspicious clouds and exotic beasts. Beyond, a patchwork of fine, fluorescent pebbles lay spread out. Among the gravel, scattered patches of exotic flowers and plants were planted in a regular pattern. In the faint morning light, washed by the misty rain, these exotic flowers and plants appeared particularly striking, a sight that was truly dazzling. Further ahead, spiritual bamboos lined the path, creating patches of shade. A few dozen steps away, a fork in the road appeared. Sun Jun led Su Poman to the left fork. They passed through a dense forest of ancient trees and arrived at a winding stone path. There were no guardrails along the edge of the stone path. Standing there, one could see a sea of clouds billowing, and peaks piercing through the mist, towering proudly under the rising sun. At the end of the winding stone path, A strange cliff emerged from the mountainside, like a seaside pier, cantilevered above the sea of fog. After climbing the stone steps of the strange cliff, they found a solitary courtyard shrouded in a formation. "Uncle Master Su, this is it. Your courtyard is numbered Jiazi number 12. It's a pretty good location. I won't go in, I'll just introduce it to you from outside. This courtyard is extremely secure, with 3 different defensive formations set up. This is the jade token that activates the formations. Elder Mu ordered me to give it to you. As long as you're in the courtyard, no one else below the Jinden stage can enter without your permission. Shielding and soundproofing formations are also set up around the perimeter of the courtyard, so you don't have to worry about privacy issues," Sunjun said, handing over a jade token that was entirely cyan and shone with a faint spiritual glow. Seeing this, Su Poman didn't hesitate to take it. He scanned it with his spiritual sense and discovered that many array patterns with different uses were engraved on the jade token. As long as spiritual power was injected into it, the jade token could be activated. The various uses needed to be tested one by one to find out. Su Poman walked to the main gate of the courtyard and injected spiritual power into the first array pattern on the jade token. A ray of green light emanated from the jade plaque, and a faint ripple of formations echoed around the courtyard, as if resonating. Then, a vast passageway materialized at the main entrance. "Come in and sit for a while before you leave, Sunjun," Su Poman turned and invited with a smile. Sunjun was about to agree, but then a thought struck him. He quickly waved his hand, saying, "It's getting late. I won't interrupt my training. Maybe next time, okay, thank you very much. Come find me if you need anything," Su Poman said with a faint smile. Sunjun's face lit up. This statement carried a lot of weight, like a small favor. He quickly replied respectfully, "Okay, Uncle Su, I'll be leaving now." Su Poman nodded, turned, and walked into the formation. After the ripples of green light dissipated, the courtyard's true appearance was revealed to Su Poman, a winding corridor at the entrance, steps lined with fluorescent stones forming a path. At the end of the corridor stood a large house, one open and two dark, furnished with beds, tables, and chairs built to fit the space. Behind the screen in the main hall, a small door led to the backyard, where a large willow tree and a pond, about 10 feet deep, stood. Beyond that, a row of bungalows with classical facades stood. A woodshed and a kitchen, seemingly used by servants, formed a corner. A sudden gap opened beneath the backyard wall, and a clear spring flowed out, a mere foot wide. It flowed through the wall, skirting the steps and the house to the front yard, swirling beneath the bamboos. There, lush trees and exotic flowers bloomed. A clear stream streamed through the trees and trees, cascading beneath the rockery. The stream's outlet was a stone sculpture with an animal face, and below it flowed a small pool, its water so clear that the bottom was visible, where a school of plump red-headed and black-headed carp swam. A few steps north of the rockery, a flat, spacious grounds emerges. Flanked by soaring pavilions, their carved eaves and embroidered railings nestle among the treetops in the valley. Looking down from the rockery, one can see a clear stream cascading down like snow, stone steps piercing the clouds, white stone railings framing the edge of the pool, a stone bridge with 3 piers, and beast-like faces spouting the torrent. The courtyard is vast, empty and silent. The only sounds to be heard are the gurgling water and the faint chirping of insects in the grass. Su Poman stood at the gate, his supervision already surveying the entire courtyard, deeply impressed by its layout and ingenious design. Although the courtyard is large, it lacks a bit of a crowd. "I guess I really need to make time to return to Pooh State." Entering the house, Su Poman discovered many ingenious features. There was a practice room with a skylight, a fire chamber specifically used for refining elixirs and artifacts, as well as an alchemy room, a study, a reception room, and so on. Arriving in the backyard, in the center of the martial arts arena stood a stone pillar, some 70 to 80 feet tall. Su Poman wasn't sure what it was for, but he sensed a strong formation fluctuation around it. He attempted to inject his spiritual energy into the second pattern on the J token. Buzz! A cyan light blossomed from the top of the stone pillar, and a misty azure blanket spread from its summit, quickly enveloping the entire courtyard. Chapter 134 8th level. Su Poman's spiritual sense swept across the sky, but he felt an immediate obstruction, as if hitting a wall. He couldn't penetrate the thin layer of green light at all. After a moment's reflection, he understood the purpose of this formation. It blocked spiritual sense. He then injected his spiritual energy into the third pattern of the jade token. A flash of black light flashed across the surface of the jade token, then sank into the stone pillar. A spherical gray light shield emerged from the platform at the top of the pillar. From the outside, it was impossible to see what was inside, and not even spiritual sense could penetrate. Su Poman had a few guesses in mind. He injected spiritual power into the third pattern again, and the gray light shield instantly vanished. Then, with a light stamp of his foot, he transformed into a phantom, vanishing from the spot. The distance of 70 to 80 feet passed in a flash, and Su Poman's figure appeared on the platform at the top of the stone pillar. The platform was over 10 feet wide. In its center sat a cushion woven from kindling grass. Standing there, one could be bathed in the sun's rays from all angles, making it even more suitable for practicing the scorching sun technique than a training room. Su Poman sat upright on the cushion and activated the third array pattern with his spiritual power. A flash of black light passed before his eyes, and he was stunned to find that nothing had changed around him. His spiritual sense could still penetrate easily, and his eyes could still observe the outside world. As for the gray light shield he had seen outside, it seemed to have vanished. A look of confusion crossed his face. He stood up, walked to the edge of the platform, and poked forward with his finger. Pop! A soft, springy feeling spread across his fingertips. Pressing harder, a faint force bounced back. It seems it's not that the gray light shield doesn't exist, but rather that it doesn't block the view and spiritual consciousness of those observing from within. It's like one-way light transmitting glass, right? Su Poman muttered to himself, then retracted his fingers and smiled softly, saying, "This platform is indeed a great place to sunbathe." He then sat back on his cushion, slowly closed his eyes, and prepared to begin practicing the scorching sun technique. Cheyenne Peak was entirely covered by a massive spirit-gathering array. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth was several times richer than that of Guangqi Peak, where the lower Taoist Academy was located. Naturally, the speed of cultivation here would be greatly increased. As soon as Su Poman began practicing the technique, he noticed the difference. The spiritual energy flowing into his body was 3 or 4 times greater than before, and even the amount of true solar fire had increased significantly. Under such circumstances, the efficiency of an ordinary practitioner's cultivation would be greatly improved. However, due to the limited amount of true solar fire accumulated, the original 2-hour cultivation period was reduced to 1. Of course, the benefits of practicing the scorching sun technique here for 1 hour far exceeded those gained at Guangqi Peak. If combined with the ice vein pill trade cultivation, 1 day of training on Cheyenne Peak would be equivalent to 3 or 4 days on Guangqi Peak. No wonder the monthly salary for sequence disciples includes a supply of ice vein pills. Of course, the more of this sun's true fire, the better, Su Poman thought to himself as he practiced, a subtle curl of his lips rising before he calmed his mind and threw himself wholeheartedly into his practice. Cultivation is like cultivating time. In the blink of an eye, winter arrived, with its biting cold winds and falling snow. The earth was blanketed in a blanket of white, the sky and earth a single, pure white. While the winter sun wasn't dazzling, it was bright enough for the disciples of the Liang sect to practice the flaming sun technique. Furthermore, the sun's true fire was less active during this season, allowing for a slight extension of their training time. After 6 months of practice, Su Poman, relying on the scorching sun technique, successfully reached the 3rd level of the key refining stage, his progress far exceeding that of cultivators with 4 spiritual roots. This was largely due to the 2 priceless bottles of purple sun pills gifted to him by Ouyang Hong. The monthly distribution of earth cloud pills and cleansing marrow pills also significantly contributed to his advancement. In contrast, his progress in the mountain moving body refining technique was much slower, like a snail's pace. After reaching the 2nd level of the key refining stage, his progress slowed even further. However, Su Poman remained undaunted. Every night, in addition to practicing sword control and various spells, he set aside a fixed time to cultivate this body refining technique. Although Su Poman hadn't used energy points to strengthen his physique during this period, his consistent practice of the scorching sun technique had absorbed ample amounts of the sun's true fire, causing his black iron body to spontaneously advance by 1 level, from the 7th level to the current 8th. Physical attributes like defense, speed, strength, and biological stance had also doubled. He estimated that with his current physical strength, he could at least compete with cultivators in the middle stage of foundation establishment. The Sea God Festival is approaching. It's time to return to Pooh Country. Su Poman opened his eyes on the stone platform, a hint of anticipation in his eyes. I wonder how Kair and Rosie are doing now. He leaped from the training platform, casually forming a hand seal and performing a light body technique on himself. With scattered snowflakes drifting from the sky, he landed lightly like a goose feather on the fine sandy ground of the martial arts training ground. Ordinary disciples who wanted to leave the mountain gate would need to ask permission from the sect or take on a longer mission. However, sequence disciples were not subject to such strict regulations. After leaving his courtyard, Su Poman headed alone towards the Sword Monastery. Before leaving the sect, he planned to inform his master of his whereabouts to avoid any complications if he couldn't find him. Su Poman, carrying a crimson sword case and clad in the blood-red battle robes reserved for sequence disciples, exuded an air of unparalleled elegance and grace. Passing the stone hut area, he paused, a thought suddenly crossing his mind. It's been a while since I've seen Rongchuan. I wonder how his cultivation has been going lately. The image of a fat man in a green robe with small eyes popped into Su Poman's mind, and a faint smile played across his lips. It was afternoon, and most people were cultivating. Su Poman approached Rongchuan's door. After a moment's hesitation, he tapped his storage bag and pulled out a sheet of yellow talisman paper. The talisman was inscribed with the finest cinnabar, seamlessly executed from start to finish. The strokes were so smooth and precise, yet upon closer inspection, they resembled ghostly scribbles, with not a single word indecipherable. This was the most commonly used short-distance communication tool in the world of Immortal Cultivation, the sound transmission talisman. Su Poman twisted the end of the talisman paper, whispered a few words, and then, with a surge of spiritual energy, ignited the sound transmission talisman. Whoosh! The sound transmission talisman, blazing with flames, ignored the formation's obstruction and flew directly through the opening in the stone ceiling above into Rongchuan's stone house. Every so often, the stone door would bang open. "Oh my God, Brother Su!" A chubby figure rushed out and gave Su Poman a bear hug. After they separated, Rongchuan's chubby hands tightly grasped his forearm, his small eyes filled with surprise. "It's been so long since we last met. I thought you'd become a sequence disciple and refused to acknowledge me as your brother." Chapter 135 Leaving the Sect. How could that be? I've been cultivating at Cheyenne Peak for the past 6 months and haven't been out much. The new year is almost here, so I'm planning to go back home to see you. It's only been 6 months since we last met, and you look so much thinner. Su Poman laughed heartily. Rongchuan glanced at his own figure, a bitter look on his face. He smacked his lips and said, "I've been relying solely on fasting pills for the past 6 months, not eating much oil, so naturally I've lost some weight. I'm craving delicious food right now. I want to eat some meat and fish, but unfortunately, most of the food at Wugadang is full of impurities. Eating too much will affect your foundation. Want delicious food? That's easy. Come on, I'll take you to Beiwilao at the foot of the mountain for a meal," Su Poman said with great enthusiasm. Beiwilao. Rongchuan's eyes widened when he heard the name. His throat couldn't help but move, and he swallowed his saliva and said, "I heard that the food in Beiwilao is cooked with spiritual materials. Not only will it not produce impurities, it can also help improve cultivation. However, the price of food there is really too scary. A meal will cost at least 200 spiritual stones. No, it's too expensive." As he spoke, Rongchuan waved his hands repeatedly. Although he knew that Su Poman had a lot of resources because he was a sequence disciple, subconsciously, he still didn't want Su Poman to spend so much money. "Don't worry, Brother Nai. It's just a meal. Don't be afraid. I have spirit stones. Not just you, but also Luman and his sister, and all the other children. We haven't seen each other for half a year. We should have a good time together tonight. I'll leave this matter to you. I need to go see Master. When I come back, we'll go down the mountain to Beiwei Tower." It's settled. Su Poman patted Rongchuan's shoulder and, without waiting for his further objections, drifted away. Rongchuan looked in the direction Su Poman had gone, pondered for a moment, and finally, with a slap on his thigh, made up his mind. Old Su has become a sequence disciple. How can I not give him a good beating? The Sword Monastery was as bustling as usual. Here, one could see all kinds of disciples coming and going, carrying sword cassocks on their backs. Su Poman walked among them, his sequence disciple attire and the flowing sword cassock that resembled a red dragon, making him particularly eye-catching. Is he the disciple of Wu Yang Gongfeng? He looks so young. He seems to be called Su Poman, and he has only been a disciple for half a year. I'm so envious. I wish I had this opportunity. I heard that his cultivation aptitude is useless. I really don't know what Wu Yang Gongfeng likes about him. Comparison is the thief of joy. Did you see the dragon scale sword box behind him? It has been stored in Wanjianfeng for several years, and no one bought it because the price was too high. I didn't expect him to get it. It is made of top-quality dragon scale wood. When everyone saw Su Poman passing by, they all stopped what they were doing and gathered together to whisper. Su Poman turned a deaf ear to them and ignored their thoughts. He strode directly towards Wanjianfeng. Not long after, Su Poman emerged from the Wanjianfeng. His master, Yang Hong, had no objection to his return home, but simply instructed him to be careful on the road and, if he encountered unmanageable danger, to use his blood and essence to activate the Black Sword token, which would save his life. As for other matters, Yang Hong remained silent. At nightfall, at the Bei Wei Lao and the market at the foot of Liang Sek's mountain, Su Poman, Nai Rongchuan, Lu Man, and the other 5 gathered, ordering a table full of delicious dishes and pairing them with spirit wine brewed from the spiritual spring water. They feasted heartily. After 6 months of not seeing each other, everyone had changed considerably. First, Quan Wing successfully forged his own natal flying sword. Although he only created 3 low-grade flying swords, he was incredibly proud and boasted about it for a long time at the table. Lu Xiner's life was far worse. The senior brother she'd been in love with rejected her under the pretext of cultivation, causing her to lose considerable weight recently. Her mood was so bad that she guzzled a large amount of spiritual wine, leading her to pass out early and fall asleep on the table, leaving Lu Man frowning. After 6 months of hard work, Nai Rongchuan had finally mastered the scorching sun technique. His spiritual energy now radiated a burning aura, evidently completing the transformation process. He explained that he'd recently made significant breakthroughs in his research on the soul cleansing technique and might soon master this secret technique. Su Poman had been reluctant to discuss his own cultivation, and everyone else was understanding, assuming his limited spiritual roots hindered his progress. Therefore, they tacitly avoided asking further questions, instead focusing on the customs of their respective hometowns. After this conversation, Su Poman learned that the annual festival in Nanayu wasn't called the Sea God Festival but the Auspicious Festival. Celebrating the Auspicious Festival was similar to the Spring Festival on Blue Star, with families gathering to celebrate the new year together, and customs varied depending on the region. The group chatted until late at night before dispersing. For safety's sake, Su Poman escorted them back one by one. He didn't return to Xianyang Peak, but instead left the mountain gates under cover of darkness, heading alone towards Xianju City. This trip was far from Pu State, so he planned to rent a beast-drawn cart in Xianju City for transportation, allowing him to continue his cultivation while traveling. It was still late when he emerged from the Huayan Mountains, and the gates of Xianju City had already been closed. However, as a disciple of the Liang sect, he naturally enjoyed certain privileges. He stood before the gates, took out his token, and waved it, and the gate slowly opened for him. A team of night-watching guards at the gate respectfully welcomed him in. Ordinary disciples wouldn't receive this treatment. At most, a small crack would be opened at the side door. Only a sequenced disciple's token could offer such a special welcome. After negotiating with the city defense battalion, Su Poman successfully purchased a Power Beast card directly from them for 50 spirit stones. The Power Beast card is a special magical instrument crafted from captured key refining stage demon beasts, combined with runes. These instruments typically consist of 2 parts, a demon beast bag and a ruai frame. The demon beast bag is similar to the spirit beast bags carried by beastmasters, but its craftsmanship is inferior, allowing the demon beast to reside within without providing spiritual energy to aid its growth. The ruai frame is engraved with the Sumerjizi formation, infused with spiritual energy. It can transform from the size of a fist into a full-fledged carriage. Furthermore, the frame is engraved with a wind-attributed formation, significantly reducing the jolting sensation and increasing speed. A mere 50 spirit stones was a relatively cheap price for a Power Beast cart. This was all because Su Poman was a sequenced disciple, and the city defense battalion wanted to give him some face, so they half-heartedly sold the Power Beast cart to him. If it were anyone else, they wouldn't even think about the price. After walking a few hundred meters out of Xianju City, Su Poman pulled the newly purchased Power Beast card from his sleeve. Taking a closer look, he discovered that the frame was only about 10 centimeters long, like a Lego toy. Extending from the shaft were two thin, silvery chains, each connected to a dark green bag. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 136, Spirit Eye Technique. Order the troops to lead the way, borrow the magic of heaven and earth, quick. Su Poman chanted a short incantation and threw the beast card in his hand into the air. With a whirring sound, the beast cart spun in the air and instantly transformed into a two-wheeled carriage 4 or 5 meters long, slowly landing on the ground. Aside from its rare bronze color and the wind attribute patterns engraved on the two-wheel hubs, it was otherwise no different from a normal horse-drawn carriage. Su Poman once again focused his gaze on the green leather bag tied to the shaft of the carriage. After making a strange incantation, he placed a seal on the bag. With a clang, the silver chain instantly stretched straight, and then the bag suddenly opened, releasing streams of smoke. Within the smoke, a buffalo-like monster stretched its body. It was about 10 feet long, with a greenish skin and twin horns. It resembled an ox, but its mouth was lined with rows of sharp, dagger-like teeth. Its jaws opened and closed, creating a ferocious look, and a faint demonic aura emanated from it. This was the most common demonic beast in the world of Immortal Cultivation, the Qingyi beast. The Qingyi beast before him possessed only the strength of the first level of the key refining stage, but its stamina was immense, making it adept at long-distance travel, easily covering tens of thousands of miles a day. It could also traverse mountains and rivers, unencumbered by the terrain's constraints like mortal horses. A thumb-sized silver plate was embedded in the Qingyi beast's forehead. Su Poman could manipulate this plate with his spiritual sense, controlling its direction and speed. Furthermore, this demonic beast required a daily diet of blood to maintain its strength, otherwise, forcing it without nourishment for extended periods could easily exhaust it to death. Although Su Poman hadn't prepared any ready-made blood food, he had recently stored away a considerable amount of fasting pills. He patted his storage bag, pulled out a long-necked jade bottle, uncorked it, and poured out a grass-green pill with a distinctive aroma. He then strolled over to the Qingyi beast, reached out his free hand to stroke its mane, and slowly placed the fasting pill to its lips. A barbed, purple-red tongue emerged from the Qingyi beast's mouth, gently rolled around the pill in Su Poman's palm, and took it back to his mouth. The Qingyi beast seemed to perk up after swallowing the fasting pill. It moved softly, flexed its hooves, and looked at Su Poman with a softer gaze, as if accepting its new master. Seeing this, Su Poman climbed onto the carriage and sat in the carriage's upper compartment. The carriage contained a single hard bed, made of the same material as the frame. Su Poman sat cross-legged on it, channeling his spiritual sense and activating the beast control plate while keeping an eye on the direction of travel. A bright glint flashed from the silver plate between the Qingyi beast's brows, and it began to move its hooves. The speed was slow at first, but gradually accelerated, far exceeding the speed of ordinary carriages and horses, even rivaling the speed of some cultivators using light body techniques. A bronze carriage sped forward between mountains and rivers. The bitter winter wind blew past the Qingyi beast without chilling it. With every breath, its nose exhaled a vast expanse of white air, seemingly imbued with heat, instantly melting the snow on the road into water. After becoming a cultivator, Su Poman discovered that in some desolate places, inaccessible to mortals, there were cultivation markets. These markets were often concealed by formations, making their presence known only to cultivators. For example, the snow-covered valley before him, under the influence of the spirit eye technique, revealed a different scene. Elegantly shaped pavilions and towers stood within, bustling with people. From afar, the scene was truly bustling. The spirit eye technique was a supplementary spell Su Poman had cultivated over the past 6 months. It allowed him to see the trajectory of spiritual energy, allowing him to not only roughly judge others' cultivation levels, but also see through simple illusions and concealing formations. Combined with his supervision, this technique had undergone some remarkable changes. Originally, the spirit eye technique could only discern the cultivation levels of cultivators of equal or lower realms, and only limited illusions and formations. However, Su Poman discovered that he could actually see through the cultivation level of his master, Yang Hong, and even discerned traces of a massive formation within the forbidden grounds of the Liang sect. After some simple verification and analysis, he determined that this miraculous change was most likely due to his supervision. Su Poman's eyes flickered with a faint spiritual light. Though separated by a formation, he saw everything clearly. Whether it was the buildings, the cultivators, or even the Foundation establishment stage expert in seclusion in the tallest building in the market, his spiritual vision could clearly see them. His supervision could penetrate matter, and his spiritual vision could penetrate formations. The two combined formed an even more powerful eye power, worthy of the name Heavenly Eye Technique. Su Poman hadn't wanted to waste time in the market, but just before he withdrew his gaze, he saw something familiar. It was a half-foot-tall statue displayed on a roadside stall. It was pitch black, its material mysterious, impervious even to his supervision. It possessed 8 arms, each forming a different hand seal. The gestures were subtly different from the one he had seen in the Xiandu city market. While the 8 arms formed the same hand seals, the hand seals were different. Su Poman clearly remembered seeing a similar statue at a stall selling ghost spirit sex storage bags in the Xiandu city market. He hadn't paid much attention to it at the time, and someone else had bought it for 300 low-grade spirit stones. Now that he thought about it, there was something strange about it. 300 spirit stones was an astronomical sum for even casual cultivators. That someone had paid such a high price for a strange golem of unknown origin must have had some ulterior motive. After pondering for a moment, Su Poman decided to buy the strange statue and study it. He returned to the carriage, changed out of his Liang sect uniform, and stowed the dragon scale sword case into the storage bag before exiting in a rather shabby white robe. After putting away his power beast cart, Su Poman walked towards the market's entrance. The misty formation could confuse the mortal eye, but it couldn't block the cultivator's spiritual sense. Su Poman easily passed through the simple psychedelic formation and saw from afar 2 young monks in dark black attire standing at the entrance of the market. Upon seeing Su Poman's arrival, the more robust-looking young man on his right frowned and muttered, "HMPH, another poor wandering cultivator has arrived." Chapter 137 Divine Ore. To enter the Qingjia Valley Market, you must first hand over a low-grade spirit stone. The tough young man spat out the sentence coldly, then he folded his arms calmly and began to look Su Poman up and down, with his mouth turned up high. Zhuangyan was standing guard at the entrance of this market, and he would come into contact with all kinds of people every day. The visitors were also divided into different levels. The highest level was naturally the disciples of the sect. When he met a sect disciple, he would go up to him very enthusiastically to ask about their well-being and make friends with them. The second was the cultivators from Immortal Cultivation families. This kind of immortal cultivators could also generate a lot of consumption in the market. The last category, and the one he looked down upon the most, was those casual cultivators who had no backing and no inheritance, because casual cultivators had the worst purchasing power, and a large part of them were even reluctant to spend the spirit stones for admission. Therefore, whenever Zhuangyan saw the poorly dressed wandering cultivators arrive, he felt an inexplicable sense of superiority. As a disciple of the Qingjia Patriarch, he was naturally far superior to those struggling wandering cultivators. He couldn't count the number of times some cultivators arrived excitedly, only to leave in dismay upon hearing the requirement of paying a spirit stone for entry. He wasted his time and energy. As for the remaining 10% who were just trying to show off, they wouldn't buy anything after entering, simply wandering around and enjoying the sights until nightfall. You have to remember that staying overnight in the Qingjia marketplace requires staying in an inn. Inns here aren't cheap, costing at least 1 spirit stone per night. Su Poman noticed the disdain in Zhuangyan's eyes and was speechless. He hadn't expected a watchdog in a small market to be so arrogant. Without saying a word, he walked over, tapped his storage bag, and pulled out a thumb-sized diamond-shaped crystal. He tossed it over. Whoosh! The spirit stone arced through the air. Zhuangyan was stunned for a moment, then instinctively reached out to take it. He opened his palm and took a closer look, wondering, wow, it's a high-purity, low-grade spirit stone. Could he be a casual cultivator? The thought flashed through his mind, and by then, Su Poman had already passed him, making no effort to stop and talk. Brother Fan, I was really wrong this time. I didn't expect that shabby-looking kid to actually be gifted with a high-purity spirit stone. Only sect disciples have that kind of stuff, right? Zhuangyan exhaled on the spirit stone in his hand, wiped it with his sleeve, and held it in his palm, examining it carefully. A young man named Gao Fan, standing nearby, immediately came forward upon hearing this. He carefully examined the low-grade spirit stone in Zhuang Bian's hand, and exclaimed in amazement, "A casual cultivator would undoubtedly be tempted to use the spiritual energy within the spirit stone several times, but this one is truly of very high purity. That fellow cultivator just now might be a diligent cultivator within the sect, not particularly concerned with outward appearances and demeanor. Otherwise, a casual cultivator wouldn't have offered such a pure spirit stone as an entrance fee. Junior brother Zhuang, if you keep this one when you turn it in, you'll get quite a few benefits. You're truly lucky today. I'll treat you to a drink when we change shifts later." Zhuang Bian smiled excitedly, pocketing the spirit stone and waving his hand. "Songyang Ziyue?" Gao Fan asked with a frown. Upon hearing this, Zhuang Bian waved his hands. "That won't do. Songyangzu is a spiritual wine. It's better to have Nverxiang Laosi, alright. But if you encounter something like this again, you must treat me to a glass of Songyangzu, or I'll take over the high-purity stuff next time." Gao Fan's face darkened slightly, and his tone became serious. Okay. Brother Fan, don't worry, next time something like this happens, I'll have a bottle of Songyangzu to satisfy my craving." Zhuang Bian smiled, but a subtle cold glint flashed in his eyes. Su Poman didn't notice their conversation. After entering the market, he went straight to the stall. For the past 6 months, the sect had given him 500 low-grade spirit stones as a monthly stipend. He hadn't used much of it, but now he had accumulated over 2,600 spirit stones, which he estimated should be enough to buy the strange statue. Most of the cultivators on the street were in a hurry, many wearing conical hats and other ornaments to conceal their figures. The street stalls displayed a simple assortment of items, elixirs, talismans, magical instruments, and so on. He had seen many of these items in the sect's market, so he wasn't particularly interested. Approaching a stall, Su Poman pretended to browse the others, occasionally picking up items and asking the stall owner for prices. After a while, he finally arrived at a stall selling statues. This stall had different items arranged in sections. At the top, there were several strangely shaped stones. Su Poman noticed the price tag on the largest green stone at the top, shining as how divine origin secret realm ore, containing mysterious opportunities, price, 50 low-grade spirit stones, gambling on stones. Upon seeing the price tag, the term inexplicably popped into Su Poman's mind. In previous lives, many on Blue Star were devoted to gambling on jadeite, spending exorbitant prices to purchase a batch of high-quality jadeite from jade mines, hoping to carve out priceless jadeite. It was like buying a lottery ticket, relying entirely on luck. A small number of people successfully carved out glass-grade jadeite, becoming overnight riches and reaching the pinnacle of their lives, while others, impulsively, spent their entire fortune on the raw stone, only to lose it all with a single cut. The markings on the raw ore from Cheyenne as how piqued Su Poman's interest. Pointing at the stones on the stall, he asked, "Fellow Taoist, may I ask why these stones are so expensive? Are they some precious refining materials?" The stall owner, a 60-year-old with gray hair, smiled faintly at the arrival of a customer. His lips moved slightly, and a voice of profound age emanated from his lips. "My Taoist name is King Mozi, and I'm a casual cultivator with no fixed place to live. I've been wandering for decades. I got these stones from the divine origin secret realm of Cheyenne continent. They contain items from a battlefield somewhere outside the domain, including various magical instruments, elixirs, magic weapons, techniques, and even immortality pills. I remember 300 years ago, a lucky guy found a legendary golden yuan pill in the divine origin ore. After taking it, he immediately became a great master in the golden core stage. 400 years ago, a cultivator who was nearing the end of his life found a sustaining youth pill, which directly extended his lifespan by 100 years. 600 years ago, a casual cultivator in the key refining stage found a magic weapon called the yin-yang mirror, which he directly refined into his own lifelong magic weapon, and has since dominated the area. King Mozi seemed to be a master of salesmanship, exaggerating the origins of these stones as rare and one of a kind. However, Su Poman didn't listen to his boasts at all. After careful consideration, he asked, "So it's fellow Taoist King Mozi. May I ask where the divine origin secret realm is, and why such bizarre stones are produced there?" Chapter 138 Gold Bracelet. Speaking of the Divine Source Secret Realm, it is an extraordinary place. In the Nanayu Kingdom, only Cheyenne Yazhou has the entrance to the Divine Source Secret Realm. Inside it is an extremely vast space. It is not an exaggeration to call it a small world. Back then, I was also a newborn calf who was not afraid of tigers. When the secret realm was opened, I went in with a few friends to find some opportunities for breakthroughs. Unexpectedly, I encountered a quarrying team from a fourth-class cultivation country. In the end, I was the only one who escaped. When he said this, Kang Mozi's eyes were a little dark and fearful, and then he sighed heavily. He took a breath and said, "Oh, it's really unbearable to look back. This Divine Source Secret Realm is different from some small secret realms in our Nanayu Kingdom. It has entrances in many cultivation countries in the Kangayan continent. Every time the secret realm is opened, it will attract heroes from all directions to go in and mine the Divine Source ore. Although the danger of mining the ore is not great, there are always some bandits with ulterior motives who specifically target lone people or weak cultivators, and rob them of the Divine Source ore that they have worked so hard to mine. These people have such bad consciences. If it weren't for that Taoist friend who insisted on going." Hearing this, Su Poman frowned, feeling that the old man in front of him seemed to have gone off topic again. He resisted the urge to interrupt him and continued to listen patiently. As if sensing Su Poman's impatience, Kang Mozi paused, then returned to the main topic, saying calmly, "These are the only pieces of raw ore I have left after my expedition. While there's a chance some of them might be hollowed out, there's also a decent chance they'll yield a treasure. Fellow Taoist, would you like to buy one and try your luck? Let me take a look before I decide," Su Poman said, grabbing one of the pitch-black, dirty-skinned pieces of divine ore and examining it carefully. A faint spiritual light emanated from his eyelids. Not only had he activated his supervision, he also used his spiritual eye technique. He could instantly see through the stone in his hand. Within the layers of fine stone texture, there was no treasure at all, nothing at all. Kang Mozi noticed the spiritual light in Su Poman's eyes and smiled faintly, though with a hint of contempt in his heart. Haha, thinking you can rely on spiritual vision to select rough stones? How naive! If that were possible, there wouldn't be any stone gambling in Cheyenne continent, and those Divine Source Masters would probably be out in the cold. Despite this thought, Kang Mozi maintained a faint smile as he patiently explained the unique characteristics of each stone. While these stones did indeed originate from the Divine Source Secret Realm, they were mostly rough stones mined from the outer regions. The chances of finding something worthwhile were very low, and there was also the possibility of uncovering something ominous. The thought of ominous darkened Kang Mozi's expression. He remembered a time in the Divine Source Secret Realm where an unlucky individual accidentally uncovered a Foundation Establishment stage blood demon while quarrying. The demon devoured the person, leaving them with a gruesome death. If this kid wants to mine Divine Source ore later, let him go back to his own cave. At least it's farther from the market. Kang Mozi thought. He appeared gentle and friendly, but in reality, he was a thick-skinned and ruthless individual. Otherwise, he would have perished in his numerous expeditions, unable to establish himself as a casual cultivator in the world of Immortal Cultivation. Su Poman examined several Divine Source ores in succession, finding no treasures within. He then set his sights on the last, smaller stone and picked it up from the stall. Initially, he held low hopes, but a glance at it gave him a sudden shock. In the very center of this head-sized stone lay a gleaming golden bracelet, engraved with strange beast patterns. The bracelet was meticulously crafted, seamlessly fitting, and seamlessly integrated. Perhaps because it was encased in Divine Source stone, the bracelet lacked any other magical qualities. "How much is this raw stone worth?" Su Poman asked calmly, stroking the surface of the ore a few times. Kang Mozi pointed to the wooden price tag where the stone had been placed and said calmly, 20 low-grade spirit stones, fixed price, that's a bit expensive. I'd probably lose money if I bought it back. How about a cheaper price? Su Poman said, placing the stone back in the distance. Just then, Zhuangbian and Gao Fan happened to be changing shifts and were passing by. Seeing Su Poman, Zhuangbian paused and walked over. "Oh, Kang Mozi, are you trying to trick people into buying your lousy stone again? Fellow Taoist, listen to me. Don't believe this old Taoist's nonsense. His Divine Source ore is obviously not good stuff. You'll definitely not be able to cut anything out of it." "Oh?" Su Poman was slightly startled, a look of suspicion crossing his face as he looked at Kang Mozi inquiringly. Upon hearing this, Kang Mozi's face flushed. He stood up and argued passionately, "Zhuangyan, don't disrupt my business here. This is Patriarch King Jia's market. It's not a good idea for you to hinder the stall owner's business like this. Besides, I brought this stone from the Divine Source secret realm after a life or death experience. I won't tolerate your slander." As he spoke, a powerful aura rose from him and rushed towards Zhuangtian. To cut off someone's financial resources is like killing the parents. Even if Zhuangtian was a registered disciple of Patriarch King Jia, it wouldn't work. In Kang Mozi's view, this status was not enough. Even if he tried to teach him a lesson, as long as he was right, Patriarch King Jia wouldn't drive him out of the market for a registered disciple. Su Poman's pupils narrowed slightly. This spiritual pressure is probably at least that of a cultivator at the 11th level of key refining. I never could have guessed. This old Taoist truly possesses some power. Zhuangtian's face paled. He took several steps back, then sank to the ground. He had known Kang Mozi's cultivation was greater than his, but he had never imagined he possessed such formidable strength. He felt a sense of panic. "How dare you, old Taoist!" A loud shout echoed from behind Zhuangtian. Zhuangtian recognized Gao Fan's voice, and he felt a surge of confidence. "How dare you bully a member of the King Jia sect in King Jia market? Do you think our ancestor's sword isn't sharp enough?" Gao Fan shouted bluntly. Upon hearing this, Kang Mozi's expression changed several times. Finally, he shook his wide sleeves, retracting his spiritual pressure, and said calmly, "I have signed a contract with the King Jia market. What does this fellow Zhuangtian mean by interfering with my business for no reason?" He caught sight of Su Poman from the corner of his eye, and was slightly surprised. When he had just released his spiritual pressure, the young man next to him was also within its range, but strangely, he seemed unaffected. How strange. However, the current situation didn't allow for excessive reflection, so he could only put the matter aside for the time being. "Even if my junior brother was in the wrong, you cannot harm anyone in this market. I will report this matter to the ancestor." Gao Fan's eyes flashed coldly. Although his cultivation level was not as high as King Mozi's, he had the support of the King Jia ancestor, a foundation establishment stage expert. Standing outside the spiritual pressure's range, he maintained a completely unyielding aura. At this time, Zhuangtian sensed that the spiritual pressure had disappeared, and he quickly stood up and patted the dust off his butt, then stared at Kang Mozi fiercely. The expression on his face seemed to say, "Just wait, you're finished," acting like a complete villain. Chapter 139, Pursuit. HMPH, even if I tell the King Jia Patriarch, what's the point? I just had my business interrupted, and I can't help but release my aura. Besides, this registered disciple wasn't injured. If this happens frequently in the market, the King Jia market will be deserted. Who would dare to do business here? If you report it, the Patriarch will only punish him, and it will also make you, as a senior brother, look somewhat incompetent. Kang Mozi's eyes gleamed as he analyzed with a forced smile. Zhuangtian was stunned by these words, lost in thought. He then whispered to Gao Fan, "Senior brother, I was indeed at fault in this matter. Let's not report such a trivial matter to the Patriarch." Gao Fan, his face slightly irritated, tossed his sleeves, and left immediately. Zhuangtian turned his head to give Su Poman a deep look, then hurriedly followed. Seeing this, Su Poman couldn't help but secretly admire Kang Mozi. This old man was truly a shrewd man. First, he pointed out the identity of Zhuangtian's registered disciple, then presented the consequences. With just a few simple words, he basically suppressed the two people's thoughts of reporting the matter. As expected of a veteran cultivator with many years of travel, he was no match for Zhuangtian's two young men. "Since the price is not negotiable, why don't you give me something as a gift? That way, I won't lose too much. I think the statue is quite good. I'd like to take it back to my cave as a decoration. Can you give it to me as a gift?" Su Poman grabbed the strange golem and carefully stroked it in his hands. Kang Mozi shook his head and said slowly, "This statue's origins are unknown. Although I don't understand its purpose, it has been burned and soaked in water. Its material is extremely special, capable of resisting both water and fire. Therefore, it cannot be given as a gift. If you sincerely desire this raw stone, I can give you the moonstones at the bottom as a gift. The others will cost you a premium." "Oh? This pitch-black statue is impervious to water and fire." Su Poman lifted the statue and examined it carefully, then frowned. "It doesn't seem to have anything magical about it. There's not even a trace of spiritual energy. Fellow Taoist Kang, you're making a big deal out of nothing, aren't you? If you want this statue, along with this stone, give me 30 spirit stones, Kang Mozi said calmly, unmoved. Su Poman pretended to think, and after a moment's hesitation, he nodded. He patted his storage bag, pulled out 30 low-grade spirit stones, placed them in a small cloth bag, and tossed it over. Kang Mozi took the bag, weighed it briefly in his hand, a faint smile on his face. With a wave of his hand, he passed the stone and statue to Su Poman. Fellow Taoist, that's straightforward, thank you. Su Poman placed the two items in his storage bag, cupped his fists towards Kang Mozi, and turned to head out of the market. Just then, in the shadows beside the road, a skinny man with a pointed face and monkey-like features stared at the exquisitely crafted storage bag at Su Poman's waist. He licked his lips, then pulled out a sound transmission talisman. After mumbling a few words, the sound transmission talisman transformed into a streak of fire and pierced the air. After leaving the market, Su Poman headed towards Pu State. He intended to use his beast-powered cart for transportation, but his consciousness unexpectedly detected a few small followers following him. With a faint smile, he abandoned the idea of using the card and instead cast a lightness spell on himself, traveling at the speed of an ordinary third-level key refining cultivator, taking advantage of any remote location. As the saying goes, true hunters often appear as prey. Su Poman's disguise was successful, his actions observed by the men behind him, boosting their group's confidence. 4 figures stood in a row beneath a sparsely vegetated sand dune. This little fat sheep looks like a rookie, and he deserves our fortune. Boss, I think this spot is good, perfect for robbing. Let's do it, a young man with triangular eyes and a goatee whispered, scratching the mole on his chin. In front of him was a pale bald man with a medium build and a face full of flesh. After he withdrew his spiritual sense, he glared at the man with the goatee. Why are you in such a hurry? This man spent dozens of spirit stones in the market. He must have some means of saving his life. Let's observe him for a while and wait until night when he is relaxed before we take action to be sure, boss. This kid is alone, and his cultivation is only at the 3rd level of key refining. The 4th one of us with the lowest cultivation is all at the 5th level of key refining. Even if this kid has some good magic weapons and talismans, he can't withstand the combined efforts of several of us. What's more, boss, you are a cultivator at the 8th level of key refining. With you backing us up, there will be no accidents, the young man with the goatee urged impatiently. The bald man was about to lose his temper when the green-faced Taoist priest beside him suddenly spoke up. Third brother, you have a point. Let's finish this deal quickly so we can rest up. The Merid Insect's secret realm in southern Xinjiang is about to open. Let's go explore there and maybe find some spiritual insects, thus shedding our status as casual cultivators and joining the Blood Goose sect. The bald man's eyes gleamed. After a moment's deliberation, he said in a deep voice, since you all think it's okay, then let's do it. But just in case, second brother and third brother, you two will go around to the back and cut off his retreat. Fourth brother and I will go up and have a conversation to lower his guard. Don't worry, boss. This kid can't get away. Let's go. Second brother, the young man with the goatee gave the green-faced Taoist priest a wicked smile and a wink. The two men spun on the spot, suddenly enveloped by 2 clouds of white mist, and then quickly split up and circled away in 2 directions. Shortly after the goateed youth and the green-faced Taoist priest vanished, the bald man's face was transformed into a friendly smile. He and the sharp-faced young man swaggered towards Su Poman at a rapid pace. Su Poman's spiritual sense registered their movements, and he blinked, a faint smile playing on his lips. Are you going to attack? Just in time, I can't hold back any longer. Although Su Poman's current cultivation level was only at the 3rd level of key refining, his spiritual sense, strengthened by 6 months of practice with a spirit tempering technique, had not only increased in strength but also increased its range several times that of an average 3rd level key refining cultivator. This allowed him to be the first to detect the disturbance behind him. Just as the bald man approached within 500 feet of Su Poman, he paused, stopped in his tracks, and turned to look back. Haha. It looks like that brat has spotted us. Fourth brother, don't show your hand. Take action immediately upon receiving my signal, the bald man telepathically transmitted. The skinny young man nodded and chuckled twice. Boss, is such a big show necessary to deal with a kid at the 3rd level of key refining? Better safe than sorry. In the world of immortal cultivation, if you're not careful, you'll probably die quickly. The bald man replied again through his spiritual sense, a hint of displeasure on his face. The skinny young man smacked his lips, gave a wry laugh, and said, "Boss, you're right." The two men, unconcealed, scurried towards Su Poman like ordinary passers-by. Both of them were aglow with a green glow, clearly using the light body technique to speed their way. I wish you all a happy Mid-Autumn Festival and happiness to your families. Chapter 140 Super Breathing. Are you also the fellow Taoist heading to the myriad insect secret realm in southern Xinjiang? Since we've been fortunate enough to meet, why not join us on this journey together? A hearty and bold voice rang out from behind Su Poman. Coming, Su Poman slowly turned, smiled, and waited as he paused, loudly inquiring, "Are you two Taoists going to the myriad insect secret realm?" The bald, burly man and the skinny young man soon reached Su Poman. The bald man clasped his fists and bowed. "My fellow Taoist, my name is Zhang Wenchen, a casual cultivator from Humao Mountain. I'm going to try my luck in the myriad insect secret realm with my younger brother." "What's your name?" "My name is Su Poman, a casual cultivator from Jinayan Mountain." "My honors," Su Poman returned the greeting. Although he had no idea what the myriad insect secret realm was, since the hunter before him had set a trap, he simply followed suit. With his current strength, he wouldn't be afraid of any setbacks, save perhaps a giant and stage expert. "So you are my fellow Taoist who is cultivating in Jinayan Mountain. My name is Yu Quan, nice to meet you." The skinny young man tried hard to act polite and courteous, clasping his fists and bowing to Su Poman. However, his pointed face and monkey-like appearance made him look like a monkey in human form, not like a serious person at all. Su Poman looked Yu Quan up and down, then glanced at Zhang Wenchen with a face full of flesh. His expression changed a little. Zhang Wenchen was very good at observing people's words and expressions, and after noticing Su Poman's doubts, he hurried to the front, waved his hand and said, "Fellow Taoist Su, little brother, let's get on the road quickly. The secret realm of 10,000 insects will be opened in 3 days, let's go there early to prepare." Zhang Wenchen rushed forward on his own, exposing his back to Su Poman, as if he wanted to dispel his doubts through this behavior. Su Poman didn't hesitate, performing a hand gesture and a light body technique before following. Yu Quan, hanging far behind them, his gaze growing cold. With a flick of his sleeve, a talisman bearing a small golden sword appeared in his hand. Along the way, the two chatted cheerfully. During their conversation, Su Poman learned about the myriad insect secret realm. This secret realm was a method used by the Blood Goose sect to recruit new disciples from among its casual cultivators. Before entering, all casual cultivators were taught the art of controlling spirit insects. Those who could surrender a sufficient number of spirit insects within 10 days were granted the privilege of leaving their status as casual cultivators and joining the Blood Goose sect as sect disciples. Although the Blood Goose sect was a demonic sect with a notorious reputation, many independent cultivators paid no attention to the distinction between righteous and demonic. In their eyes, cultivation resources were more important than anything else. The path of independent cultivators was already difficult, and many would resort to any means necessary to obtain resources, even killing their teachers, relatives, and friends, and some even resorted to robbing and murder. Many already harbored demonic tendencies, and if they were lucky enough to join the Blood Goose sect, it would be perfectly suited to their needs. Various techniques and secret arts would be readily available, and their cultivation path would become much smoother. After about another stick of incense, the azure glow surrounding Su Poman suddenly vanished, and his speed slowed dramatically. He paused and said slowly, "Fellow Taoist Xiang, my spiritual power is running low. I need to recover before continuing. How about we rest here for a while?" As he spoke, Su Poman tapped his storage bag and pulled out a low-grade spirit stone. He held it in his hand and pretended to absorb it. The shimmering diamond-shaped crystal glittered in the sunlight, blinding Yu Quan. Such a pure spirit stone. This kid actually uses such a high-purity spirit stone to replenish his spiritual power. How extravagant, Yu Quan exclaimed inwardly. He turned to Zhang Wenchen, his eyes filled with eagerness. He transmitted a telepathic message, "Boss, if we don't act now, when will we?" Zhang Wenchen scanned the surroundings. They were nestled in a valley, blanketed in snow. In the distance, pine trees, covered in icy blades, gleamed in the sunlight. Beneath the snow lay a patch of dry grass. Next year, a vast expanse of half-human high weeds would surely sprout here. Zhang Wenchen nodded in satisfaction and said with a broad smile, "This is a nice place. Beautiful scenery. Perfect for fellow Taoist Su. As he spoke, the smile on Zheng Wenchun's face gradually shifted, the curve of his lips growing wider and wider. Although still a smile, the latter gave off a sinister and terrifying feeling. "What do you mean, fellow Taoist Zheng?" Su Poman was about to ask when something unexpected happened. "Attack!" Zheng Wenchun roared, then with a flick of his hand, he pulled out a thorny iron net. With a strange laugh, he threw it directly over Su Poman's head. Whoosh! The iron spikes on the thorny iron net glowed a deep purple light, as if imbued with a deadly poison. Simultaneously, Yu Quan activated a pale golden talisman paper in his hand. With a gentle blow, the talisman instantly transformed into a small golden sword, flying towards Su Poman's face. Facing the sudden double attack, Su Poman remained remarkably calm. He puffed out his cheeks, inhaled sharply, and blew upwards. A powerful stream of air burst from his mouth. Whoosh! Superhuman breath. The clouds in the sky dispersed at a speed visible to the naked eye. The thorn net was falling with lightning speed, about to cover Su Poman, but the hurricane swept it away like a leaf. The pitch-black thorn net landed in the snow not far away, a layer of white frost covering it, as if it had been subjected to extremely low temperatures. What? Zheng Wenchun's pupils constricted at the sight, and his heartbeat slowed a beat. Yu Quan, however, smiled at this moment, as the cold golden light was quietly approaching Su Poman's lower back. He imagined the rookie being severed by the golden sword talisman, his intestines gushing out in a stream of blood. A cruel smile unconsciously crossed his lips. Zheng Wenchun also noticed this scene, and just as a flicker of joy rose in his heart, he was confronted with a scene that frightened him to death. Ding! The golden sword bounced back as if it had struck a transparent iron wall. Then, two fingers gently grasped it, as if grasping a bug. Flying sword, Su Poman frowned and held the golden sword in front of his eyes. An immense force emanated from it, and like a slippery little fish, it struggled continuously, seemingly trying to escape from his fingers. "Oh, so it's a rune." Su Poman gently twisted his fingers as if rubbing dirt. With a bang, the golden sword between his thumb and index finger exploded into a ball of golden dust, its light and shadow instantly vanishing. Then, Su Poman's cold eyes swept across, resting on Zheng Wenchun and Yu Quan. "Oh no! I've hit a wall this time." Zheng Wenchun recalled the scene just now, and cold sweat broke out on his bald forehead, his face grim. Chapter 141, Sword-Wielding Enemies. "There should be two more ahead, right?" Su Poman asked without waiting for a response. Without waiting for a response, he slapped his storage bag and pulled out a shimmering dragon-scale sword case. Fennying, go! With a flick of his mind, a stunning crimson flying sword flew out of its sheath, disappearing into the air in the blink of an eye. "Senior, we were wrong. We didn't recognize Taishan Mountain. Please spare our lives." Zheng Xiangshan slumped to his knees, begging for mercy. Meanwhile, Yu Quan, on the other side, was horrified by the sight. His eyesight wasn't as sharp as the boss's, and while he'd spotted some clues, he hadn't fully grasped the gap between the two sides. He'd held out a glimmer of hope, believing that the four of them, working together, could annihilate this formidable foe. But Zheng Xiangshan's performance immediately made him panic. Yu Quan knelt on the ground and said with his spiritual sense, "Boss, the worst that can happen is that we fight him. Can the four of us really not beat him? I think he must have a rare treasure to block the attack of the golden sword talisman. However, this method is probably extremely consuming. He will definitely not be able to hold on for many times. Why should we beg for mercy from him? Why not do this?" Just as Yu Quan was speaking, a red shadow came from the horizon, carrying two round objects. Yu Quan took a closer look and suddenly felt as if he fell into a cold cellar. His whole body trembled uncontrollably. The flying sword returned to its sheath, and two round objects rolled in front of the two of them. Zheng Xiangshan's face was pale, staring at the head with a goatee, his heart like a churning sea. He's actually a sword cultivator. This time, I should have known. I shouldn't have listened to the third brother. Damn him, he had to rush into action. Now, I have to die with him. Zheng Xiangshan was secretly resentful. At this moment, he raised his head and met Su Poman's smiling eyes. His heart beat violently a few times. What a bad guy. He just killed two people and he is still smiling so brightly. I hope he won't be tortured later. Please, don't kill me. Yu Quan crawled to his knees in front of Su Poman, crying and shouting, his face full of fear. Since you have chosen this path, you should be prepared, Su Poman said coldly. Zheng Xiangshan's heart sank upon hearing this. After a moment of mental struggle, a look of relief finally appeared on his face. He slowly rose from the ground, brushing the snow off his shirt before carefully adjusting his collar. He stretched his neck and smiled. If that's the case, then come on. I hope your sword is swift. He closed his eyes and waited. Yu Quan, however, could not accept the fact that he was about to die. His eyes widened in fear, filled with remorse, and he kowtowed repeatedly to the ground. Senior, please spare my life. They are the masterminds. Zheng Xiangshan is the one who committed suicide. So kill him and spare me. I was forced into this. I have parents to support and children to care for. Shut up. A red light flashed. Silence fell on the scene. Yu Quan remained kowtowed, his body hunched over the ground, his head rolling to the side next to the other two. Hot blood gushed from his chest like a fountain. Hiss, hiss, hiss. Blood stained the white snow crimson, like red roses blooming on a white canvas. Thousands of meters away, 2 roses also blossomed, but by this time, the bone stumps at the cavity had begun to freeze, and the roses had ceased to grow. Zhang Wenchen closed his eyes and waited silently. The hissing sounds around him gradually died down, and silence fell. Could it be that he intended to spare me? Confused, Zhang Wenchen opened his eyes, only to be met with a flash of crimson light, followed by a fountain of blood. His perspective shifted, and he bumped into Goatee. Before he could form a single thought, his consciousness sank into an endless darkness. Since you're a man, I'll let you live a few more minutes, but you can't expect to survive, Su Poman said to himself, waving his hand and retracting the blood-stained burning shadow sword. Against the minions of this level, the burning silence sword was simply unnecessary. At that moment, fine snowflakes drifted from the sky. Slowly, the sun was obscured by dark clouds, and the wind howled. Heavy, feather-like snow blanketed the ground in a blanket of white. Amidst the vast expanse of sky and earth, 3 corpses were quickly buried in the thick snow, and the storage bags at their waists vanished. A bronze beast-drawn chariot, treading through the snow, gradually disappeared into the valley, its tracks quickly vanishing in the wind and snow. The further south one traveled, the warmer the climate became. The snow gradually faded, and patches of green began to appear, and the sunlight grew even brighter. Southern Xinjiang is a land of rainforests, enduring scorching summers year-round. Recently, with the impending opening of the myriad insects' secret realm, the number of cultivators visiting has increased exponentially. On the streets, in the alleys, and even in some remote caves, a few low-level cultivators from outside are active. 90% of these cultivators were independent cultivators, arriving here hoping to participate in the myriad insects' secret realm opened by the Blood Goose sect and, through the trials within the secret realm, join the sect. Su Poman had already spotted traces of several battles while traveling through southern Xinjiang. Clearly, these independent cultivators weren't harmonious here. The strongest among them were often arrogant, deliberately picking fights to bully the weak. If they encountered resistance, they found it perfectly to their liking. Defeating their opponents would reward them with valuable cultivation resources. Those of lesser strength were in great danger in such a mixed environment. They often sought out a few friends, forming small groups to protect themselves. However, once they entered the secret realm, they were on their own. Faced with the lure of profit and sect membership, even the most entrenched independent cultivator groups could turn against each other. At that moment, Su Poman was sitting on the second floor of the Lingmi tea house in the market. Many cultivators gathered there to chat, but most were casual cultivators struggling to make ends meet. Few could afford to order a pot of spiritual tea, so they mostly just sat there chatting. The owner of the tea house downstairs came up several times, but seeing how outnumbered they were, he could only accept his bad luck. Have you heard? With the opening of the 10,000 insect secret realm this time, the Blood Goose sect has increased the number of places for joining the sect. This must be because the 7 sects martial competition of Nanayu Kingdom is about to start. The Blood Goose sect probably wants to find a group of seedlings among the independent cultivators to get a better ranking. Haha, Brother Z is right. In the end, it depends on us, a group of independent cultivators who don't care about our lives, to earn some face. Those greenhouse flowers in the sect have probably never even seen blood. They really have spiritual power in vain. Our independent cultivators are indeed experienced in hundreds of battles and have rich experience in fighting. Once we replace them with better skills and magic tools, we will be like a tiger with wings, a dragon entering the sea, and our combat power will be much stronger than those little brats who grew up in the sect. Chapter 142 Blood Refining Spirit Insect. Su Poman, dressed in a white robe, his attire somewhat shabby compared to the silken garments of the other wandering cultivators, sat alone at a table in the corner, quietly listening to the messages coming from all around him. Spirit insect, there must be quite a few spiritual objects containing energy points in that secret realm, right? If I could uproot the spiritual objects in a secret realm and transform them all into energy points, then, Su Poman's heart pounded at the thought, his heart aching with excitement. Although he now had accumulated over 2,000 spirit stones, he didn't intend to convert them all into energy points. He would save some for emergencies and also purchase spiritual materials to study the art of swordsmithing. Even when he was in the Liang sect, Su Poman hadn't converted any of his spiritual objects into energy points, as doing so would easily arouse suspicion and be counterproductive. As the saying goes, a rabbit doesn't eat grass near its burrow. Now that he'd finally been able to leave the sect, Su Poman was ready to make a big splash, eat as much as he could. After careful consideration and extensive research, he settled on the Blood Goose sect's Myriad Insect Secret Realm, a small secret realm affiliated with the Blood Goose sect. The Myriad Insect Secret Realm boasts not only a variety of exotic spiritual insects, but also spiritual stone minerals, exotic flowers and plants, and low-level demonic beasts. The vast expanse of the realm creates a unique biosphere dominated by spiritual insects. Although a small secret realm, its area is immense, roughly the size of an entire state in Nanayu. 2 days from now, the Blood Goose sect will open the Myriad Insect Secret Realm. Su Poman plans to blend in with a group of independent cultivators and infiltrate the Myriad Insect Secret Realm to plunder. As for the opportunity to join the Blood Goose sect, he simply ignored it. As a sequence disciple of the Liang sect, he naturally disdained the opportunity to become an outer disciple of the Blood Goose sect. The market town where the tea house is located is not far from the Blood Goose sect's secret realm. Many independent cultivators have gritted their teeth, paying a spirit stone to stay in the market town, awaiting the opening of the secret realm. Consequently, the streets and alleys of the market are infested with independent cultivators from outside, and the market security has been significantly increased. While independent cultivators won't spend spirit stones on tea, they are generously spending on magical instruments, talismans, and elixirs to combat the insects. They are quite concerned with life-saving measures. Recently, the barrier avoidance pills and detoxification pills in the market town have been selling like hotcakes, selling out several times in a matter of days, only to be restocked and then sold out again. Furthermore, the insect catching net, a magical instrument from the treasure shop, has also sold in large quantities. In order to join the Blood Goose sect, independent cultivators have worked tirelessly and made thorough preparations. In the blink of an eye, 2 days have passed. At dawn, the wandering cultivators from the market town poured out, rushing towards the Blood Goose sect's secret realm. Su Poman followed the crowd, passing through a dense, humid jungle, and arrived at a deep valley beneath a sheer cliff. To the east of the valley rose a cliff so steep that even birds could hardly traverse it, towering over 1,000 meters. Beneath the cliff lay a circular stone pool, its surface a layer of grass-green water. Peering down from the surface, the pool was incredibly deep and dark, seemingly bottomless. Legend has it that the Blood Goose sect maintains a Foundation establishment stage insect beast within this pool, specifically to guard the Myriad Insect's secret realm. If anyone rashly triggers the formation at the entrance, the insect beast will leap from the pool and devour the intruder. Perhaps because of this rumor, the wandering cultivators stayed away from the pool, waiting silently in the dense forest to the west of the valley. The enormous moon in the sky was at full, casting a brilliant light. The entire valley, except for the densely forested areas, was bathed in moonlight. Su Poman stood in a corner of the valley, a faint spiritual light glimmering from his eyelids. His gaze pierced the formation at the entrance to the secret realm, and he saw the shadowy figures of a dozen or so Blood Goose sect disciples, along with 2 Foundation establishment elders seated on benches. On the highest wooden platform within the formation, a thin, dark-skinned old man cloaked in a loose green robe opened his eyes. Green streaks marked the corners of his eyes. He spoke calmly. The 10,000 insect secret realm has attracted quite a few wandering cultivators this time. Yes, my little darlings, we can have another good meal, another plump, purple-lit old man chuckled dryly, patting the spiritual insect bag at his waist. Although Su Poman's super hearing couldn't penetrate the soundproofing formation to hear their conversation, he was able to eavesdrop on the conversation between the 2 Foundation establishment cultivators by lip reading, using the analytical power of his super brain. The thin, Dark-skinned old man in the green robe spoke again. The blood-refining spirit insects devour the flesh and blood of these wandering cultivators, then feed our natal spirit insects. I believe this will significantly improve them. Tisk, tisk. This lucrative position is one of the few in the Blood Goose sect. It's a pity that elders like us only get to rotate in once every 10 years to receive such benefits. If we could have this opportunity every year, I believe reaching the late foundation establishment stage wouldn't be too difficult. Don't be too drastic. This time, during the 10,000 Insects Secret Realm trial, at least 15 wandering cultivators must be spared to silence the gossip. Otherwise, there won't be enough food when the 10,000 Insects Secret Realm opens, the purple-lit old man said in a low voice. Below, the dozen or so disciples, clad in the uniforms of the Blood Goose sect, all wore blank expressions, like puppets, oblivious to the words of the two elders on the platform. Su Poman, observing this, felt a chill run down his spine, his mind forming a vague suspicion about the two elders' exchange. Then, his supervision penetrated the Blood Goose sect disciples' clothing, and saw that beneath the expressionless young man's robes, a dense swarm of black insects swarmed. The insects resembled the legendary corpse-eating bugs, though slightly smaller. Tiny holes covered his skin, and the black insects darted in and out, as if they had made his flesh their home. A strong feeling of nausea washed over him. Damn. This is psychological harm. Su Poman's face paled, and he immediately averted his gaze, subconsciously glancing at the other disciples, only to have his expression worsen. The spirit insects on each disciple were different, seemingly divided into different types. Among them were winged green ants, colorful moths, thumb-thick silver-backed centipedes, razor-toothed ladybugs, and walnut-sized black venomous bees. Damn, as expected of the demonic sect, they've actually transformed their disciples into insect nests. They even want to use the myriad insects' secret realm to attract independent cultivators to serve as food for the spirit insects. Their intentions are far too sinister. Su Po's chest was simmering with rage. He wanted to expose their conspiracy, but calming down realized it wasn't realistic. Going against a sect with a strong background on his own was clearly irrational. Furthermore, with no identity, no cultivation, and no reputation, no one would believe what he said, only to think he was crazy. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 143: The Insectoidist's Inheritance. At daybreak, a sharp, piercing whistle echoed from within the formation. Gululu bubbles the size of watermelons continuously rose from the surface of the stone pond, churning and overflowing from the edge. Splash! A massive creature slowly rose from the deep waters. Only when the water cleared did its true form reveal itself. Only a small portion of its body remained above the surface, its dark compound eyes scanning the crowd with a cold gaze. What a massive centipede! A wandering cultivator exclaimed in surprise. The others retreated involuntarily. Su Poman also took a closer look. He saw that the giant centipede's torso was icy blue, with two dark red segments from the head on. It had a pair of purple-black antennae and a pair of venomous hooks. A red bloodline ran down its back, running from head to tail, with two longitudinal ridges. Its abdomen was a wrinkled brown-yellow. From the second segment onward, each segment bore a pair of translucent blood-red limbs, curved into hooks, like a pair of blood jade hooks. Even this small section of its body was over 5 meters tall and about a meter in diameter. The claws near its mouth vibrated constantly, making a da-da-da sound that gave it an inexplicable sense of fear. This centipede has always been hiding in the water, which is inconsistent with its nature. I wonder whose pet it is that has the ambition to transform itself into a dragon. As he pondered this, the formation at the entrance to the secret realm opened in a flash of light and shadow, revealing a wooden platform within. On the high platform, two elders in the foundation establishment stage stood high up, emitting a strong spiritual pressure. Today, my Blood Goose sect will open the trial of the 10,000 Insects Secret Realm. If you, the independent cultivators, can gather 5 kinds of spirit insects by the closing day of the secret realm in 10 days, you will be able to join my Blood Goose sect and become an outer disciple. At that time, you will naturally be required to learn the skills and the secret art of controlling insects. In addition, this secret realm is full of dangers. If you unfortunately die in the secret realm due to greed, It is purely your own fault. My sect will not bear any responsibility. Without further ado, I believe you also understand the rules of the Blood Goose sect. No one is allowed to hide spirit insects and leave the valley without permission. Otherwise, they will be discovered by the Sky Centipede Beast. I don't need to say much about the consequences. I hope you will take care of yourselves. The voice of the green-robed old man, which contains spiritual power, spread throughout the venue. His tone was very cold. Then he and the purple-lit old man looked at each other, and each took out a jade talisman. The two jade talismans were completely fitted together under the urging of spiritual power, and then a burst of dazzling light broke out. Even the moon in the sky was eclipsed by this light. After the flash of light, a rumbling sound echoed from the entrance to the secret realm, followed by a massive, 3-meter-tall portal of light. The secret realm has been opened. If not now, when? The purple-lipped elder shouted, warning the many casual cultivators present. Whoosh! 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 Before the purple-lipped elder could issue a warning, the dozen or so Blood Goose sect disciples had already flown in. Once inside the secret realm, they were randomly teleported to various locations. As they found their feet, spirit insects began to fly out from the sleeves and collars of their robes, gradually forming a swarm that vanished into the vast wilderness with a whistling sound. Beneath the vast robes lay tattered remains, seemingly devoid of consciousness. After releasing their spirits, they sat down on the ground, their aura of life completely extinguished, as if they were truly corpses. There was only one person who, after sitting cross-legged on the ground, had a hint of spirit in his eyes. He suddenly raised his head and looked at the sky. His messy hair covered his eyes, and there was an ugly scar like a centipede under his eyes. The corners of his mouth slowly raised an inexplicable arc, and his voice was like a worn-out blower, saying intermittently, "Haha, if I hadn't been lucky enough to train a natal spirit insect for the Blood Goose sect, I'm afraid I would have really become your puppet? My good master, you wait for me. After I have collected the spirit-eating insect in the secret realm, I must repay you for your cultivation of me." Then, he slowly stood up, tore off a piece of cloth, tied up his messy hair, then made hand gestures with his hands, patted his chest, and suddenly spit out a red pill from his mouth. Upon seeing the red pill, the scarred youth's eyes darkened with hatred. Puppet soldier pill. Master, even though I'm the least talented of my fellow disciples, there's no need to refine me into a Taoist puppet. Humph, if I hadn't received the Insect Taoist's Jade Book of Insect Inheritance, I'd have been a mindless, walking corpse at your mercy. With a single step, the pill shattered like an egg, and from its red shell emerged a strange black insect the size of a grain of rice. Upon contact with the air, the insect emitted a high-pitched, sizzling sound, emanating an extremely ferocious aura, its tiny mouth parts waving up and down as it tilted its head. Boom! A bolt of flame slammed into the insect, enveloping it and igniting it. With a crackling sound, the flames instantly reduced it to a wisp of black smoke. The scarred young man put away his spells and cast a distasteful glance at the ashes. Then, he let out a series of eerie whistles. Simultaneously, he formed a strange spell with his hand, and circles of transparent ripples spread outward from him. Not long after, the strange ladybug that had previously detached from his body returned with a buzzing sound. Master, I'm afraid you never imagined that all those blood-refined spirit insects I painstakingly cultivated are now under my control through my secret technique. With these blood-refined spirit insects, I am invincible in this myriad insect secret realm. Haha, once I gather a batch of resources and subdue that soul-devouring insect, I'll conquer the world. Not even a Foundation establishment expert can stop me. Ha ha ha, the scarred young man said confidently, gazing at the golden-toothed ladybug dancing before him. Cough, 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 as if suffering from a long illness, he coughed after a violent laugh. A few veins, streaked with purple, appeared on his neck. Spirit insects, return. The scarred young man executed a hand gesture, and the insects that had been hovering in the air around him suddenly swarmed towards him like fledglings returning to their nests. Under his robe, the holes were filled with golden-toothed ladybugs. The scarred young man narrowed his eyes. An expression of immense enjoyment on his face, like a long lonely widow whose emptiness had finally been satisfied. A long drought finally brings a downpour. Although my body has been transformed into an insect nest by that old scoundrel Huandong, fortunately, the Insect Taoist's Jade Book of Inheritance records the cultivation method using spiritual insects as a body. According to the book, this method, when practiced in the advanced stages, is nearly immortal. As long as a single spirit insect bearing the imprint of the primordial spirit remains alive, gathering the insect swarm again allows for resurrection and rebirth. Tisk, tisk, I'm really looking forward to it, beyond the secret realm. At the moment the scarred young man killed the strange insect, the purple-lit old man's expression changed instantly. He turned his head and stared at the entrance to the secret realm with a very grim expression. The puppet insect was actually killed. Was Fengshan teleported to the core area of the secret realm? That's really unlucky. If my blood-refined spirit insect is targeted by the abnormal spirit insects or monsters in the core area, I'm afraid it will be devoured. Sigh, this trial is really a blood loss. Chapter 144 Flowers Falling and Buzzing. After a brief moment of initial hesitation, thousands of independent cultivators flocked to the secret realm's entrance. Su Poman blended in with the crowd and entered the myriad insect's secret realm. As soon as he passed through the portal of light, he felt a strange force envelop his body, instantly transporting him hundreds of miles away. Opening his eyes again, Su Poman's pupils dilated, and with his supervision, he took in the entire secret realm. Above him, a semicircular sky shone with a brilliant white light, like an inverted white jade bowl. Beyond the sky, the area was indistinct, as if some immense force obstructed his view. Su Poman's pupils returned to normal, and he withdrew his gaze, taking in the scene before him. He was now in a dense forest near a lake. He twitched his nostrils, noticing a sweet aroma lingering in the air. Not far away, on the ground, stood a cluster of strikingly large pink flowers. Though they had only 4 petals, they were remarkably vibrant, with vibrant red stamens emerging from their stamens. The sweet aroma emanated from these stamens. The area where these pink flowers grew seemed a forbidden place, where no other plants could grow. Light from above streamed in through the gaps in the forest. The pink flowers swayed gently in the breeze, carrying wisps of sweet pollen even further afield. Bang! A raccoon-like demonic beast, about to attack Su Poman from behind, suddenly plummeted from the tree, landing heavily on the ground. It foamed at the mouth and died. Su Poman had already spotted the demon raccoon, but being so young, he hadn't paid much attention to its sneak attack. However, seeing it die without warning, curiosity piqued. He walked over, lifted it up, and, using his supervision to penetrate its fur, peered through its internal organs, even the path of its bloodstream. Poisoned, Su Poman examined it carefully, finally discerning the cause of the demon raccoon's sudden death from a few clues. He looked solemnly at the clusters of vibrant pink flowers not far away and muttered to himself, "The pollen of these flowers is actually poisonous." He casually tossed the demon raccoon's corpse to the ground. A few breaths later, tiny pink flowers sprouted from its ears, eyes, mouth, and nose. A cool breeze blew through the forest, and the flowers rustled across the corpse, illuminating it with a strange and inexplicable beauty under the dome's light. What weird plants these are! If an ordinary cultivator is teleported here, he will die on the spot if he is not careful. Fortunately, I have a superhuman physique and high resistance to poison, Su Poman said as he was about to turn around and leave. After taking 2 steps, his body stopped. He slapped his forehead and turned back. I almost forgot what I came here for. Such weird flowers should be worth some energy points. Although he was very confident in his physique, he still used his biological stance to wrap himself up tightly just in case. After approaching one of the big pink flowers, he reached out and touched it. Energy detected. Has it been converted into energy points? Sure enough, Su Poman's face showed a surprised smile. Transformation completed. You've earned 6 energy points. Su Poman's eyes lit up instantly. Staring at the clusters of pink flowers before him, his heart ablaze with excitement. This is rich. Energy points are everywhere. And the energy points contained are dozens of times more than the swordgrass I encountered before. In the dense forest, Su Poman's figure flashed like lightning, almost turning into a streak of light. In a short while, he had plucked every pink flower in the area. Just as he was about to attack the last flower, a sudden buzzing sound rose from the distant jungle. Su Poman turned his head and saw a swarm of pink-winged bees, their wings fluttering from afar. They quickly passed through the jungle and arrived at the spot where the pink flowers had originally grown. As they arrived, the swarm suddenly paused. The slightly larger pink-winged bee at the head of the swarm circled in confusion, as if questioning its existence. The following bees also seemed agitated. They all clearly remembered this spot as a nectar-feeding spot, but upon arriving, the clusters of delicious food were nowhere to be found. However, The leading bee soon spotted Su Poman and the lone remaining large pink flower beside him. Su Poman swept his spiritual sense over the swarm, instantly calculating the number of spiritual insects. As over 200 pink-winged bees watched, he touched the pink flower with his palm, instantly reducing it to ash. Buzz! 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 The bees were instantly enraged by this action, and a high-pitched fluttering of wings echoed from the swarm, like arrows poised for release. Swish! Like an army under command, the 283 pink-winged bees scattered in all directions, forming a vast net. The net suddenly drew closer, and then Su Poman heard a dense explosion of gas. Oh! Oh! Tisk! Tiny, shimmering black needles pierced the air and shot rapidly towards Su Poman, like the mortal hidden weapon, the rain of pear blossom needles. Their range was immense, like a torrential downpour, impossible to dodge. Su Poman showed no sign of panic. He was confident in his defenses. He stood still, his gaze calm. The tiny, ox-hair-thin poison needles swarmed towards him, and just as Su Poman was about to be pricked like a hedgehog, the needles stopped 2 feet away, scattering to the ground with a clatter, as if hitting a hard, smooth shield. While Su Poman was unharmed, the trees elsewhere suffered. The stinger of the pink-winged bee, though small, seemed to possess a strange, rotating force. Upon contact, it bored a finger-sized hole in the trunk, from which a foul smell rose. In an instant, a lush tree had been eroded by the stinger, creating a hole the size of a human head. Puffs of acrid, unpleasant white smoke drifted from the hole in the trunk. Hiss, 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 a terrifying, corrosive sound emanated from the trees and bushes beside Su Poman. White, poisonous smoke rose, gradually forming a strange miasma in the dense forest. Even a trace of it would instantly wither and kill a mortal. It's so toxic, but, I've watched Animal World before. Since you bees have already sprayed out your stingers, you probably won't live long. Su Poman seemed to be talking to the bee colony, with a look of regret on his face. Alice, it's a pity. If it had a stinger, maybe it could contain more energy points. Buzz buzz buzz. The bee colony saw that the creature that destroyed their food was not dead yet, and became even more irritable. With a violent whistling sound, the bee colony circled behind Su Poman again. In Su Poman's shocked eyes, the tail part of this group of poisonous bees actually quickly grew a black stinger again. And then there was another burst of rapid machine gun fire. Do-do-do-do. Chapter 145. Blood-sucking moth. The miasma thickened. A figure emerged unscathed from the white smoke, leaving the swarm stunned. After a flurry of wing beats, the swarm retreated, their wings clamoring for air. With a sharp buzz, they flew away on a gust of wind. Only the leading pink-winged venomous bee remained. Apparently, due to a previous misstep, it had lost its position as leader and been left alone, perhaps out of its own will. Though its intelligence was limited, it understood that the culprit behind the current situation was the strange-looking creature before it. Buzz! Its wings vibrated rapidly, its tail twitched slightly, and more poisonous stingers shot forth. Su Poman casually waved his sleeve, and a gust of wind swept through, blocking the poisonous stings. You look quite pitiful. I'll let you go this time. Seeing that the poisonous stings were powerless, the bee leader seemed to grow anxious. Its entire body swayed slightly in the air, releasing a cloud of powder mist from its wings. Then, with a flutter of its wings, its body transformed into a streak of light within the mist, and with a tragic sense of both destruction and destruction, it charged straight at Su Poman's chest. Its speed was lightning fast, but Su Poman's supervision made it seem like slow motion. He leaned slightly, and a muffled bang echoed from behind, where the white smoke enveloped him. Su Poman turned his head and couldn't help but grin. Tisk, tisk, that's tragic. It crashed into the rock. Now there's no way to get it out. Why are you so stubborn? Beneath the white smoke, a fist-sized hole had been punched into a large exposed rock by the poisonous bee. Su Poman didn't care whether it was dead or alive, nor did he intend to continue competing with a small insect. He followed a path of abundant spiritual energy in the forest, reaching out and touching the surrounding plants as he walked, occasionally receiving energy points. Satisfied, Su Poman explored even more diligently, reaching out for almost every new thing he encountered. Relying on his strong defenses, he was not afraid of sneak attacks from uncanny creatures. This secret realm lurked countless dangers. Not only were there various spiritual insects, but also spirits of demonic beasts and plants. For example, the seemingly ordinary leaf before him actually concealed a multicolored moth. Like chameleons, their body color changed to match the surroundings. When prey approached, they swarmed, their wings emitting an intoxicating mist, and their slender mouthparts, like steel drills, penetrated deeply into their prey's body, draining all its essence and blood. A few dozen steps away from Su Poman, a hapless individual lay. He wore a cyan-feathered Taoist robe that looked pristine from a distance, but a closer look revealed a dense web of tiny holes. The robe's owner's eyes were wide open, a look of resentment evident, as if he had died with his eyes wide open. His entire body, brimming with spiritual energy, had been drained dry by the multicolored moths, leaving him like a mummy. His left hand was raised high, as if struggling to grasp something. A simple spiritual sense scan would reveal nothing unusual, but his supervision revealed the swarm of seemingly transparent moths. Strange moths, so venomous. I can't spare you. Turn all of you into my energy points. He hadn't previously slain the swarm of pink-winged poisonous bees because he had proactively destroyed their food supply. But this swarm of blood-sucking moths was different. He inched closer to the corpse lying in the mud pit. Suddenly, a hazy mist appeared from nowhere. Green leaves flew from the trees, transforming into a swarm of multicolored moths, surrounding Su Poman in the center. At that moment, Su Poman saw the front of the moths. Their abdomens resembled human faces, their long bellies like witches' proboscises. Their dark eyes blinked and watched as their wings fluttered. The moths didn't wait for Su Poman to react before swarming over him. A normal person's reaction would have been several times slower in the psychedelic mist, but Su Poman seemed unrestrained. With a thud, he withdrew his dragon scale sword case, holding it behind him. With a gentle tap, a red shadow flew out. Fly, a red shadow flashed across the field, and the swarming multicolored moths seemed frozen in time. The next moment, puff puff, puff. Explosions erupted one after another from the fist-sized, bat-like vampire moths. A closer look revealed thumb-sized moth heads being cleaved in half. The sharp sword energy instantly destroyed any remaining vitality within them, and the human blood within their bellies exploded. Colorful moths fell one after another, like falling leaves. Su Poman reached out and caught one, a dinging sound echoing in his mind. These moths are truly extraordinary. Even the remains of a single moth contain 12 energy points. Su Poman's figure flashed across the field. Before the colorful moths fell, each one crumbled to ash, transformed into energy points by him. After collecting the moth corpses, Su Poman approached the corpse, gently caressing its still eyes. Then, with a casual tug, he snatched the storage bag from its waist. Boundless heaven and earth, earthly elements carrying the marsh, swamp magic. Su Poman muttered a short incantation, extended his finger, and instantly, a stream of earthy yellow magic emanated from his fingertips, slowly sinking into the earth. A square patch of earth and sand began to stir violently, and within a few breaths, a swamp formed. Fellow Taoist, since I've taken your belongings, I'll help bury your body to protect it from the wolves of the mountains, Su Poman said, once again unleashing his object control technique and moving the corpse directly into the swamp. Then, with a tremendous force, he overturned the swamp and the surrounding earth and rocks, instantly forming a mound roughly 2 meters high. Alright, may you rest in peace here. Su Poman instinctively clapped his hands, then pulled out his science storage bag and scanned it with his spiritual sense. His expression suddenly took on a strange expression. Are all independent cultivators so poor? His storage bag contained a dozen low-grade spirit stones of low purity, a low-grade magical instrument of unremarkable appearance, and no elixirs. He did have 2 jade slips, one of which contained a key refining stage technique called King Muju. The other, the most popular item in the market, contained secrets about the myriad insects' secret realm. It not only contained records of the various spirit insects, demonic beasts, and treasures within, but also included a simple map. Su Poman roughly determined his position by tracing the direction of the surrounding mountains. Then, with a glint in his eyes, he once again followed the direction of higher spiritual energy concentration. Chapter 146 Sonic Girl. In a densely forested area outside the secret realm, 2 shabby-looking men in blue teamed up to force a female cultivator into danger. Brother, you go ahead. I see this little girl still has some vital energy. Once you've taken it, I'll quench my thirst. One of the pale, thin men rubbed his hands and chuckled. The other man was over 7 feet tall, with arms that went past his knees, a majestic face, and a circle of beard on his chin. His eyes flashed with lust as he stared at the pink-dressed female cultivator in front of him who had nowhere to escape, and said with a lewd smile, "Haha, brother, you are thoughtful. In that case, I will give you a few more spirit insects I find later. For now, let's take down this little girl first. Although she has reached the 5th level of key refining, her combat experience is too poor. The two of us working together are enough to subdue her. Although the pink-dressed girl had a panicked look on her face, there was a hint of shrewdness in the depths of her eyes. She pretended to be defeated by the two men and kept retreating into the valley. She fiddled with her hands twice obscurely, sprinkling a layer of transparent powder on her clothes. I didn't steal your spirit insects, so why are you chasing me? The pink-dressed woman said in panic. She glanced back at the dead-end cliffs deep in the valley, tears welling in her eyes, a charmingly pitiful expression that further excited the two men in blue. Ha ha ha, we're the renowned flower-picking duo in the southern border cultivation world. My dear, you haven't heard of us, have you? The thin man said with a slightly smug chuckle. The pink-dressed woman was startled, then her face drained of color. She couldn't help but exclaim, "You're the infamous flower-picking duo, you're lucky to have fallen into our hands. We're both highly skilled masters. We guarantee you'll be in heaven." The bearded man rubbed his crotch, a greasy, pig-faced expression on his face. The thin man and the bearded man exchanged glances, then, with wicked grins, surrounded him. "Don't come over here," the woman in the pink dress desperately retreated, her back towards the cliffs of the valley. "Don't come over here," she retreated timidly, her delicate body slamming into the hard rock. She cried out in pain, stumbled, and fell to the ground, quickly curling up into a ball, revealing a sliver of smooth, fair skin beneath her pink dress. Tisk, 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 such a stunning little beauty, how could I let you go? The bearded man smirked, slowly approaching. The sight of her smooth calf intensified his excitement, and he tugged at the J-belt around his waist, causing his pants to fall down. "Brother, I think this girl is truly stunning. How about this? You take the main road, and I'll take the side road. Let's enjoy this beauty together," the thin man suggested, swallowing hard. The bearded man's eyes pondered for a moment, then he said impatiently, "Let me have a go first, then we can go together. This is top-tier stuff. Two people would be too much of a bummer. Don't worry, I'll be quick. If you take another step closer, I'll scream," the girl in the pink dress said pitifully. Ho ha, scream all you want. This myriad insect secret realm is so vast, no one would come to your rescue even if you scream your throat out. My brother and I only used a spirit fusion talisman to temporarily connect our spiritual energies so we wouldn't be separated by the teleportation array at the secret realm entrance. Beyond that, expecting to encounter another casual cultivator with the audacity to meddle in our affairs is pure wishful thinking. You'd better just serve us two brothers, the bearded man said excitedly. Without waiting for the girl in the pink dress to react, he leaped forward, his hands flashing with yellow light. At that moment, the panic on the girl's face vanished, and the cold glint that had been lurking in her eyes emerged. "Since you've told me to scream, I'll let you hear me," the woman in the pink dress said in a sinister tone. She parted her rosy lips, gazing at the bearded man pouncing before her, and suddenly a sharp, piercing sound emanated from her lips. Ah! 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 Translucent sound waves emanated from her voluptuous red lips, spreading outward like ripples, instantly impacting the oncoming bearded man. The moment they made contact with the transparent ripples, the bearded man's eyes bulged out, blood spraying from his ears. Bloodshot streaked his eyes, expanding in the wake of the sound waves. Pa, pa, two crackling sounds of vitreous humor rang out, and the bearded man's eyeballs exploded in their sockets. The intense pain in his head sent him collapsing to the ground, clutching his eyes and screaming in agony. However, the cries of pain were drowned out by the pink-dressed woman's shrieks. The thin man, though a little further away, also suffered a piercing blow to his ears. He stumbled backward in terror, fearing his eyes would explode. The pink-dressed woman sneered, the sonic waves suddenly stammering. She transmitted a telepathic message, "Brother, you're not here to bully me, are you? Where are you running to?" As she spoke, her fingertips gently formed a magical spell, and strands of transparent silk, thinner than spider silk, quietly rose from the ground at the mouth of the valley. The thin man taped a golden talisman to his body. He felt his head swollen, as if struck by a sledgehammer. A deep sense of drowsiness washed over him. He bit his tongue, forced himself to focus, and sprinted backward. The previously harmless girl in the pink dress now looked like a demon to him. He hurriedly glanced back, only to see her once again part her voluptuous red lips. Recalling the strangeness and terror of the previous sonic attack, his face paled. Empowered by his light body technique, he pushed his agility to its limits, covering distances of dozens of feet with each stride. The pink-dressed girl followed leisurely behind. Seeing the man near the valley's entrance, she suddenly sped up, letting out another terrifying scream. Ah! The thin man in blue heard the sound and sped up even more, wishing his parents hadn't given him 2 more legs. Transparent silk threads crisscrossed the valley's entrance like a spider web. The thin man, caught in such a rush, failed to notice the trap ahead and dove headfirst into it. The golden light shield around him offered no protection. The thin man's speed slowed down sharply, and the transparent silk thread was stained with a hint of blood. He stared wide-eyed, somewhat incredulous, and then bloodstains gradually appeared on his face, quickly turning from light red to deep red. The next moment, his entire body was like being cut by a sharp blade. And flesh and broken bones clattered to the ground, and blood spread out from the pool of flesh. Haha, 2 perverts, falling into my hands, just perfect to track the blood evil insect rank 83rd on the 10,000 insects list. I hope you can directly become a core disciple of the Blood Goose sect after you get out, the woman in the pink dress said indifferently, looking at the broken bodies on the ground. At this time, her aura had changed significantly from before. Her cultivation level, which was originally only at the 5th level of key refining, had strangely risen to the 9th level of key refining, as if she had mastered an extremely advanced concealment technique. Someone's coming, the woman in the pink dress frowned slightly, then a look of joy returned. I was just worried that 2 bloody meals wouldn't attract the bloodworms. It's like a pillow just when I was sleepy. Prey has arrived. With a gentle wave of her hand, she tucked the minced meat into her blood-red pouch. She hurried back into the valley and immediately finished off the bearded man. She then sprinkled her body with transparent powder again, tidied her appearance, and after a moment's thought, she tore off a section of her skirt, revealing her plump, white thighs. She lay half-lying beside a boulder, her face pitifully near death. Help! Help! From the valley rang out a series of enchanting, bone-softening female voices, each one like the sweet moans of a newlywed on their wedding night, enough to send ripples of excitement through any man's heart. Is someone shouting for help? Su Poman paused, his hand pausing to touch the strange plant. His supervision instantly pierced through the obstruction, revealing the woman in the pink dress in the valley. Her round, jade-like legs shone in the sunlight, and a look of helplessness etched across her pale face. Su Poman's heart softened, and without a second thought, he headed straight for the valley. Chapter 147 Valley. The wind whistled in his ears as Su Poman shuttled through the forest. After going around to the valley entrance, his sight passed through the dense flowers and trees, and he saw the dying girl in pink skirt lying on a huge rock. As if noticing Su Poman's arrival, the girl's eyes showed hope, and she looked at the direction of the valley entrance with a happy face and called softly, I don't know which Taoist friend is here. I encountered a villain and was seriously injured after a fight with him. I hope you can come and rescue me. Su Poman saw the situation in the valley and felt a little curious, so he asked calmly, how did the girl fight? How could she even damage her underwear? Taoist, it's like this, cough cough. The girl in pink skirt coughed twice as she spoke, and an unnatural blush appeared on her face. The villain took advantage of me and used a talisman to freeze me, which ruined my clothes like this. Fortunately, I have a jade pendant to break the ban on me, otherwise I would have been raped by that villain. Woo woo woo. At this point, the girl in pink skirt couldn't help crying softly. Her voice was gentle and low, like crying and complaining. Young lady, don't be sad. Do you have any healing pills in your storage bag? I came down in such a hurry that I didn't pack any for internal injuries, Su Poman replied honestly. As he spoke, his eyes couldn't help but linger on her radiant legs, and he felt a sudden surge of anger rising in his heart. Yao Jungsing's words took on a different meaning. What cultivator coming to the myriad insect's secret realm wouldn't have packed some healing pills? Even the most straitened cultivators would have a few for internal and external injuries. Despite Su Poman's sincere words, Yao Jungsing assumed it wasn't that he didn't have any, but that he was reluctant to give them to her, a complete miser. Disgust etched itself in her eyes, and she shifted her legs slightly, as if to stand. The movement revealed a rip in her pink skirt, caught by the breeze, a glimpse of her delicate whiteness and tenderness. Ouch! Yao Jungsing cried out in pain, frowning and falling on the boulder again, but in her heart she was cursing the idiot in front of her for not knowing how to be gentle with the women, and why he didn't come up to support her in such a situation. Su Poman reacted at this time, and hurriedly walked through the gorgeous flowers and trees to the side of Yao Jungsing, holding her slender and weak arm with one hand, and skillfully holding her slender waist with the other hand. He looked around to check her injuries, and after a long time he couldn't help asking, "Miss, are you okay? Where are you hurt?" "I cough." Yao Junxing looked at Su Poman beside her, and a strange smile gradually appeared at the corner of her mouth. She opened her red lips slightly, and said with a breath as fragrant as orchid, "My heart is hurt. It's been so long, and I still haven't gathered enough spiritual, flesh, and blood food, so please die." As soon as the words fell, deadly sonic waves emanated from Yao Junxing's lips. Su Poman, standing so close, bore the brunt of the impact, his ears instantly filled with a shrill roar. He was oblivious to the incoming sonic waves, but his superhuman hearing amplified the terrifying noise countless times. Girl, you're too noisy," Su Poman frowned, reaching out and pinching Yao Junxing's face. With a slight pressure, her delicate red lips pouted, her face wrinkling in a rather endearing way. However, Yao Junxing's sonic spell hadn't yet subsided. As Su Poman continued to pinch, the girl's voice suddenly underwent a strange shift. A series of sharp, shrill murmurs escaped Yao Junxing's small mouth intermittently, the scene suddenly becoming somewhat eerie. Su Poman's super hearing, with its powerful adaptability, had now adapted to this sound wave. Upon hearing this rhythm, a dazed look crossed his face, and he was inexplicably reminded of the art films he'd watched in bed during college. "This rhythm is so familiar," Su Poman said, as if possessed by a strange force. Yao Junxing seemed to understand, her pretty face flushing bright red all the way to her neck, even her smooth neck tinged with a faint crimson. She quickly formed a hand seal and stopped the sonic spell. Using sonic spells 3 times in a row today had drained her spiritual energy considerably. She now had less than 30% of her spiritual energy left, insufficient for any other powerful methods. Seeing Su Poman, unharmed by the sonic spell, Yao Junxing couldn't help but shudder, a touch of fear rising in his chest. He'd never imagined that even his strongest methods wouldn't be enough to defeat this cultivator, seemingly only at the 3rd level of key refining. "Fellow Taoist, you're truly remarkable. You can actually hear a young woman singing. Just now, you came to support me. I was grateful, so I wanted to sing a song. I didn't expect my voice to be so unpleasant. I'm truly sorry," Yao Junxing said, forcing a smile. Su Poman, no fool, glanced at Yao Junxing sideways before shoving him away. "Stop pretending. You fooled me once with this trick, and you still want to. Haha, for the sake of our teachers, I'll spare your life today. I don't want to argue with a mere woman like you." With that, Su Poman headed straight out of the valley, still anxious to quickly loot items before the 10-day deadline. He wanted to gather more spiritual objects and energy points to further advance his black iron body. "I wonder who those teachers he just mentioned are? I was lucky enough to escape death thanks to them." Yao Junxing breathed a sigh of relief as Su Poman left. Then, remembering the golden silk he'd laid out at the valley's entrance, a daring idea struck him. Without time to ponder, Yao Junxing formed a hand seal, and thin, transparent thread suddenly stretched across the air at the entrance, a sight unnoticed by ordinary cultivators. Su Poman's pupils narrowed slightly, a cold glint flashing in his eyes. Then, his pace quickened, and he dashed past the valley's entrance. Bang! 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 Just as Yao Junxing's face flickered with joy, she heard the agonizing sound of silk thread snapping. Her heart tightened, and a sudden realization drained the color from her pretty face. Su Poman paused outside the valley's entrance, his eyes a cold glint. He picked up a stone and tossed it back, his figure transforming into a gust of wind, disappearing into the distance. Yao Junxing swiftly reached the valley's entrance. With a flick of her fingers, strands of shimmering golden silk emerged from the ground. With her delicate jade fingers, she gently grasped a broken golden silk thread. Her pretty face darkened, and she muttered to herself, "Who on earth is he? With only the 3rd level of key refining. He's able to break a golden silk thread comparable to a top-grade magical instrument with his bare body. Could he be a disciple from one of the leading physical cultivation sects in the upper-class cultivation nation, infiltrating the blood goose sect to obtain the technique left behind by the spirit insect master?" As she pondered this, a black shadow like a meteor shot towards her. In Yao Junxing's eyes, an irregular stone grew larger, but it was too late to react. With a puff, a bloody hole, extending from front to back, appeared on her smooth forehead. The stone shot out from the back of her head, carrying a mass of red and white matter with it. Before she could even feel a hint of regret, her eyes dimmed, and she fell back into a pool of blood. Chapter 148 Safe Zone. Su Poman had originally intended to let go of her out of respect for the teachers, but she was reckless and provoked him again, so he had no choice but to send her to the afterlife. His most important task now was to hurry and collect spiritual objects within the secret realm. With Su Poman as his center, he would touch everything within a radius of several dozen feet, transforming everything containing energy points into energy points. His path was like a swarm of locusts, reducing not only plants imbued with spiritual power to ash, but also spiritual insects and even demonic beasts imbued with special energies. He glanced at the remaining energy points on the purple source wheel, feeling a surge of excitement, and began collecting even more diligently. While other cultivators struggled to withstand the various dangers within the secret realm, Su Poman treated it as if it were his own backyard, unfazed by any danger. Protected by the powerful biological force field, nothing on the outer reaches of the secret realm could harm him. As Su Poman continued to collect, more and more item information was stored in his brain. Eventually, he could discern which items contained energy points and which were mundane with a simple glance. As a result, his collection of spiritual objects became increasingly rapid, leaving behind patches of spiritual object vacuums. Even the extremely active spiritual insects of the secret realm became scarce. This strange sight puzzled many casual cultivators. It was said that this myriad insect secret realm was teeming with spiritual objects, precious spiritual medicines abounded, and spiritual insects of various types were many times more numerous than in the outside world. But now, patches of emptiness remained in the desolate mountains and wilderness. Even the spiritual insects and red demonic beasts had vanished, as if they had evaporated from the face of the earth. This situation gave the lower-level cultivators who entered the vacuums a strange sense of relief. Those casual cultivators who had come to try their luck only discovered the terrifying nature of the secret realm after entering. Within a few hours, hundreds of them had perished at the hands of various bizarre plants, spiritual insects, and demonic beasts. Even meditating to regain their spiritual energy was a source of trepidation, fearing a massive maw would suddenly open beneath them and devour them. Su Poman's presence had effectively created a large safe zone, essentially eliminating any danger within it. This gave these low-level casual cultivators a place to stay. While some were delighted, others were naturally worried. Many powerful independent cultivators had come with the intention of joining the Blood Goose sect, but the surrounding vacuum zones were a source of concern. According to some historical records, the outer reaches of the myriad insect secret realm were sufficient for them to obtain sufficient spirit insects, thereby securing a chance to join the Blood Goose sect. However, this situation seemed to have changed. In many areas, not only were the spirit insects completely gone, but even the spiritual medicines used for alchemy had been devoured by some monster, leaving nothing behind. This forced some cultivators to venture deep into the myriad insect secret realm to secure sufficient spirit insects. Su Poman was unaware of this, but he had previously stumbled upon the Blood Goose sect's plot. Therefore, during his searches, he would use his spiritual sense and vision to track the blood-refining spirit insects. However, it seemed that the spirit insects had collectively gone into hiding, and the Blood Goose sect elders' planned spirit insect blood purge of independent cultivators had not yet arrived. Su Poman had no better solution. He could only plunder every inch of land, slaying every strange spiritual insect he encountered, transforming them into nourishment for his black iron body's advancement. As the saying goes, a man cannot become rich without unexpected fortune, nor can a horse grow fat without night grass. Among the independent cultivators, some diligently sought spiritual insects, while others harbored ulterior motives, seeking to kill and rob. Groups of 3, 5, or even 7 or 8 would collude, laying traps, placing spiritual herbs or other treasures in strategic locations to lure the weaker independent cultivators to the trough. Then, several would swarm in and slay the lured prey with various tactics. These individuals were generally formidable, each possessing 1 or 2 unique skills. For example, Su Poman encountered this particular scene. From the otherwise ordinary forest before him, a rich aroma of spiritual herbs wafted. Deep within the dense forest, a spiritual light flickered, suggesting the growth of powerful medicinal herbs. But Su Poman's spiritual vision revealed all these despicable tactics. In the dense forest, a dark green formation cloaked in the light. At its center sat a 3-foot-tall spiritual herb resembling a golden bean. Amidst its dense branches and leaves hung several green and red fruits, translucent like crystal, shimmering with a bewitching radiance under the dome's illumination. An ordinary cultivator would be captivated by the spiritual herb, making it difficult to detect its presence with the naked eye or divine sense alone. Meanwhile, 3 feet beneath the dark green formation, 3 cultivators shrouded in yellow light crouched. One of them was short, like a dwarf, but with an unusually large head and purplish black lips. Unlike any other, he resembled a dwarfed sweet potato sprouting from the earth. He formed hand seals, maintaining a circular magical instrument, unleashing a disappearing earth spell, concealing the 3 figures beneath the ground. The other 2, one dressed in a long, dark brown robe, had a stoic, wood-like face, a look of decayed wood, a Taoist priest in his 70s. The third, with bare arms, stood over 2 meters tall. He had a square face imbued with righteousness, but with long slits between his eyes, giving him a hint of femininity and cunning. He crouched in the yellow light of the magical instrument. Before the 3 lay a crudely shaped silver mirror, its surface reflecting the surrounding forest. "Master Gong, we've caught a fish. Haha, look at the sword case behind this young man. He seems to be a sword cultivator," the large-headed dwarf exclaimed excitedly, licking his purple-black lips. The old Taoist narrowed his eyes slightly, examining it carefully. Then, in a voice that sounded rather condescending, he said, "HMPH, I don't know where he got this crude sword cultivation technique from. He even imitated the true sword cultivators of the Liang sect and crafted a bizarre-looking sword case. What a joke. I'm afraid it's just like the red flame fruit we have above, just a showpiece. It looks good. But it's actually just some fancy spiritual materials plastered together to attract attention. I don't think it's any real skill." The square-faced burly man remained silent, his eyes gleaming with undisguised greed as he gazed at the ancient silver mirror. "We'll each have a share of this man's sword cultivation technique. As for the magical instruments and talismans, as usual, we'll trade them for spirit stones at the market and split them equally. If he truly has a few types of spiritual insects, the highest bidder gets them," the big-headed dwarf said, shaking his head. The old Taoist priest remained silent and nodded, and the square-faced strong man responded directly with "okay." Everyone fell silent again, staring at the scene in the circular mirror, hoping that their prey would fall into the trap sooner. Chapter 149. Entering the battlefield. Su Poman, carrying the dragon scale sword case, slowly stepped into the dense forest, heading straight for the elixir emitting a strange fragrance. Within the woods, the azure light filtered through the gaps between the branches, casting patches of luminous light on the ground. All around was silence, a pin drop could be heard, not even the chirping of an insect. Almost. Just 2 more steps and he'll be within the formation. The large-headed dwarf stared intently at the ancient silver mirror, his eyes gleaming with eagerness. The old Taoist in the black robe smiled faintly. He patted the storage bag at his waist and pulled out an ancient, verdigris-patinated array disc. Its surface was engraved with intricate patterns, and dots of green, wood-attributed spiritual energy rose from it. Crack! Su Poman crushed a dead leaf under his foot, and his other foot stepped over a small puddle, bringing him closer to the elixir resembling the red flame fruit. "Get started." The old Taoist in the black robe's eyes flashed with brilliance, and he activated the array disc in his hand. An invisible wave emanated from it. The moment Su Poman landed, a strange, dark green array suddenly arose around him. The array was small, covering only about 10 feet in radius. Then, a yellow light flashed on the ground not far from the array, and 3 figures emerged from the earth. "Finally, we're out." I was almost suffocating. The square-faced man stretched his arms and stretched his body as he emerged, clearly feeling very uncomfortable from being huddled up underground. "Ha, brat, you've fallen into our pocket formation. Forget about getting out alive today." The large-headed dwarf approached the formation, letting out a strange laugh. He looked at Su Poman as if he were a dead man, his face full of mockery, and urged, "Old Gong, let him taste the power of your small's house in falling wood formation." The old Taoist in the black robe nodded slightly, then tapped the formation plate a few times. The dark green formation suddenly glowed brightly, illuminating the 3 people's faces in a lush green. Combined with their eerie and cruel smiles, they looked like 3 evil ghosts. Whoosh! A gentle breeze blew past, and the trees surrounding the formation withered at a visible speed, reduced to dead branches and leaves in just a few breaths. Su Poman's face was expressionless. He turned and looked at the 3 people outside the formation indifferently. He looked up and saw the shadows of giant trees, as thick as several people could hug, forming in the sky above. An incomparable pressure came from above. These massive trees didn't resemble physical objects. Instead, they were formed from wood attributed spiritual energy, fused by the power of the formation. They were incredibly heavy and incredibly difficult to destroy. Even if one were to be destroyed, the others that followed would overwhelm any entrapped enemy, ultimately shattering their protective shield and crushing them to pieces. Seeing Su Poman's composure, the large-headed dwarf felt a sense of wonder, wondering, what's keeping him so calm in the small Haushin falling tree formation? Is he frightened? The phantoms of the giant trees gradually solidified, followed by a series of air-ripping woo-doo sounds. Each tree, one after another, plummeted towards Su Poman with immense force. After all this trouble, this is just a formation. Boring, Su Poman muttered, his gaze fixed. He slapped the sword case behind him, and the instant the sword hummed, the burning shadow sword whistled out. Seeing this, the old Taoist priest in a black robe couldn't help but shrink his pupils. He quickly shouted to the two people beside him, "This little thing is difficult. You two should use some tricks quickly. I think this boy's sword-wielding skills are quite similar to those of disciples from a major sect." As he spoke, the burning shadow sword transformed into a red light and cut through the shadow of the giant tree. Sparks and a dazzling golden light flashed, and the shadow of the green-skinned giant tree in the sky seemed to be ignited by the flames. Suddenly, the wood spirit went into chaos. After a few more flashes of red light, the shadows of the giant trees suddenly exploded into a sky full of stars with a loud bang. The entire formation seemed to be affected and became unstable. The old Taoist priest in the black robe became even more anxious. While controlling the formation plate to launch another offensive, he quickly said, "His flying sword has the power of at least a high-grade magic weapon. Everyone, don't hold back. This guy is not simple. If you hold back, everyone will die." The other two exchanged a glance, their expressions becoming solemn. The large-headed dwarf flipped his hand and pulled out a cocky talisman. With a surge of spiritual power, the talisman instantly ignited. The flame wasn't red, but instead emitted a rich earth elemental glow. "Dungeon talisman, go!" The cocky talisman shot out with a whoosh, hovering above Su Poman's head. Immediately, the earth beneath his feet surged. Gravel and soil, enhanced by the cocky spiritual power, transformed into an inverted bowl-shaped cage. The square-faced burly man formed a strange hand seal, and his skin was instantly coated in a pale golden hue. He resembled a golden arhat. A golden aura emanated from his countless pores, instantly enveloping him. He strode ahead, pulling a heavy weapon resembling a vajra from his storage bag and blocking the two men. At some point, the old man in the black robe grasped a small black banner, emanating a sinister, ghostly aura. With a gentle wave, he launched a vast expanse of black mist, obscuring the skylight above. Two fiendish ghosts leaped from the banner, their terrifying fangs and green faces flaring with terrifying howls. Their lower bodies shimmered like clouds of smoke, their upper bodies seemingly solid. Their claws gleamed with a chilling cold light in the black mist. They penetrated the prison created by the dungeon spell unhindered, striking directly at Su Poman, who was trapped within. Su Poman had already sensed the ghost's approach, and a faint red light flickered in his eyes. But after a moment's deliberation, he felt no need to reveal his true strength. With a quick, sharp hand gesture, an exorcism spell quickly took shape. Before the evil spirits approached, Su Poman calmly and confidently released his seal, emitting a faint white light. The two evil spirits froze in their tracks. Though their intelligence was limited, they sensed a sense of threat from the seal. However, this sense of threat was limited. After all, they were only at the 6th level of key refining. Su Poman's exorcism, even at the 3rd level, was powerless against them. Just as they hesitated, the burning shadow sword, located outside the dungeon, gently swept across, instantly destroying the core of the small house in falling wood formation. It then swung back, easily breaking the blockade created by the dungeon technique. With a swish, two glowing holes appeared between the two evil spirits' brows. Following two sharp, shrill cries, the two spirits were reduced to ash by the fire-attributed spiritual energy contained within the burning shadow sword. If it was aimed at cultivators, the power of the burning shadow sword would be far from achieving such an effect. However, Su Poman's cultivation method was the scorching sun technique, and his spiritual power contained a trace of the sun's true fire, which had a natural restraining effect on ghosts and evil spirits. Therefore, he was able to easily deal with two evil spirits at the 6th level of key refining. Chapter 150 Yuanji Qianchong Peak. Crack. A crack suddenly appeared on the black banner. My! Are those two green-faced ghosts dead? The old Taoist in the black robe took a deep breath. Then, thousands of fiery red sword lights appeared on the khaki dungeon surface. The next moment, the dungeon disintegrated into a cloud of shattered debris. Amidst the smoke and dust, a white-robed figure stepped out. Is that all you have? Su Poman asked calmly, his burning shadow sword circling around him as he stared at the three people before him. A fierce gleam flashed in the big-headed dwarf's eyes. He slapped his storage bag again and pulled out a fist-sized miniature mountain-shaped magical instrument. With a series of incantations, the khaki mountain grew larger and larger, eventually reaching the size of a building. Simultaneously, the old Taoist in the black robe casually threw out two formation beads, forming a simple yin-yang trapping formation, trapping Su Poman in place. With a distant gesture, the big-headed dwarf, carrying a heavy, oppressive feeling, soared above Su Poman's head. Haha, prepare to die? His purplish-black lips trembled slightly, and the mountain crashed down. Buzz! A tremendous wind pressure came from overhead. Su Poman looked up, and with a thought, he instantly slashed with a burning shadow sword. The big-headed dwarf's face paled slightly. He quickly pulled a spiritual energy replenishing pill from his storage bag, swallowing it. His complexion brightened slightly. He had accidentally acquired this magical weapon during an expedition. The more mana he poured into it, the larger and heavier it became. Its material was incredibly hard. He believed that even a top-grade magical weapon wouldn't be able to break it with a single blow. Therefore, upon witnessing Su Poman's actions, a hint of sarcasm crossed his face. As he expected, the stunningly shaped fiery red flying sword plunged directly into the base of the mountain, but was held in place by a magical energy imbued within it. Su Poman frowned. In terms of spiritual power alone, he was only at the third level of key refining. While the spiritual power from the khaki mountain wasn't as high in quality as the fire-attributed spiritual power cultivated through his fiery sun technique, it completely outnumbered him. For a moment, the burning shadow sword only slowed the mountain's descent, but couldn't completely stop it. Since that's the case, I won't waste my time. Su Poman, disinclined to continue tangling with these dying men, simply launched a punch, shattering the Lion Yi confinement formation. The old Taoist in the black robe gasped, a sudden sense of foreboding in his heart. Then, the khaki mountain plummeted downward. The big-headed dwarf was about to smile even brighter, but his face froze. In the middle of the scene, the khaki mountain, 70 or 80 feet tall, was being lifted up by the skinny-looking young man with a single hand. How is that possible? The big-headed dwarf exclaimed, his eyes wide with disbelief. Then, suddenly sensing a strong murderous intent within him, he screamed, "Use your trump card now, or we'll all die." He retreated several steps, then with a flick of his hand, pulled out a shimmering talisman. He glanced at it with a pained look before unleashing it. Go, Gravity Talisman! The talisman shot forth, instantly emitting a vast expanse of yellow light that enveloped Su Poman and the ochre-colored mountain. Gravity within the area was instantly increased dozens of times. This pressure not only affected the body, but also the internal organs, heart, brain, and more. A mortal under the gravity talisman would be crushed into pulp before a single breath could elapse. The large-headed dwarf gazed expectantly at the area covered by the gravity talisman, but the situation was beyond his expectations. The handsome young man in the white robe remained expressionless, as if he were holding not a heavy, magically imbued mountain, but a weightless ball of cotton. What kind of pervert is this? The old Taoist priest in the black robe also noticed something was amiss and stepped back. He patted his storage bag, pulled out a piece of green talisman paper, and applied it to his body, intending to flee. However, he gritted his teeth, flipped his hand, and pulled out another round object. After a moment's hesitation, he returned it to his bag. Master Gong, at this time, you're still reluctant to use that heavenly thunder seed, the large-headed dwarf said grimly. The old Taoist in the black robe shook his head slightly. Using this heavenly thunder seed on a cultivator at the third level of key refining is a waste. Even with proper use, it could kill a foundation establishment cultivator. Chu-1, try your shattering arrow. If it doesn't work, we'll retreat. This thing is too strong. Just consider this our bad luck. The three communicated via telepathic communication, a few words taking less than a breath. Upon hearing this, the square-faced burly man, without hesitation, tapped his storage bag and pulled out a bow and arrow. The bow was wrapped with golden silk thread at both ends, and the feathered arrows were engraved with runes. The tip of the arrowhead shone with a chilling cold light. He then knocked the bow, drew it to a full moon shape, and gently released his finger. Whoosh! The shattering arrow tore through the air and shot straight towards Su Poman. Su Poman twisted the mountain in his hand, gazing coldly at the incoming shattering arrow. I remember being injured by this type of arrow the first time, but things are different now. Haha, with a sneer, he stepped forward to meet the shattering arrow. Something's wrong. The old Taoist in the black robe couldn't help but step back a few steps, feeling a little uneasy at Su Poman's uncharacteristic behavior. The broken key arrow moved with lightning speed, transforming into a gray shadow in the air before reappearing, colliding with Su Poman's chest. Ding! A brilliant burst of sparks erupted from thin air, as if a transparent iron wall had appeared before Su Poman. What? The square-faced man's face paled. The broken key arrow's purpose was to penetrate the protective key, but now, it was blocked by an invisible barrier, unable to penetrate even an inch. You've all made your moves, now it's my turn, Su Poman snorted coldly. He spun the mountain he was holding a few times, then swung it violently. The mountain instantly flew out of his hand, hurtling towards the three men with the speed of a meteor. Woo! The mountain displaced the air, generating a powerful wind pressure, and a massive shadow instantly enveloped the three men. The large-headed dwarf screamed and frantically tried to control his magical weapon with his spiritual sense. However, as soon as he activated the mountain, an incredibly powerful backlash struck his mind. Puff! The dwarf spat out a mouthful of blood, and anxiously transmitted his thoughts. Jin Chongfeng is moving too fast. I can't control it. I can only hold off for now. The Earth Escape Ring will take some time to activate. Elder Gong, take me away. Upon hearing this, the old Taoist priest in the black robe couldn't help but blink. He glanced up at the speed of the mountain, which was now obstructing the skylight. The giant in his sight grew larger and larger. He felt as if he was locked in place by the aura of some powerful demonic beast, his thighs pinned to the ground as if unable to obey his will. Oh my god, why are my legs out of control? Chulun, hurry up! The square-faced man named Chulun was still calm at this time. He put away the Vajra and retreated violently. When passing by the two people, he grabbed the back of their collars with one hand each, and then his thigh muscles suddenly swelled up like the thickness of a bucket. Then he jumped back with the two people and narrowly avoided the area covered by Qianshong Peak. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone, see you in the next video.